Now, weather with Chief Meteorologist Mark Johnson.
All right, an exciting day weather-wise and at the polls. As you've been listening, we've got a few little rain showers that have continued to come in off the lake, some light drizzle and sprinkles here, but the bulk of the rain has moved out of here into the state of Pennsylvania, and I think the clearing trend will be with us through the overnight hours, so you probably will see a little sunshine as you begin your Wednesday morning. Let's take a look now at our big board weather maps, and we have 47 degrees in Cleveland now. 42 is the dew point, a north wind at 15 and a rising barometer. Lots of 40s out there, one lone 50 at Dover, New Philly. And then we go southward towards Cincinnati, Columbus, Athens, Steubenville. They're in the 50s now. 64 the Cleveland high. We had almost 7/10 of an inch of rain, so quite a rainy day around the region, and that was a common number, right around 7/10 for most everybody. But again, the movement of the rain showers off to the east. We got a cold front that moved through earlier today. It's bringing in some more seasonal air. Although tomorrow, if you need dry weather, you got it. We'll be cool, low 50s, maybe mid 50s, but we should see quite a bit of sunshine before the next low pressure area moves in on Wednesday. Here we go, on Thursday, I should say. Here we go, 40 degrees, chilly for the kids. Some of you in the upper 30s, some fog as well. Wear those warm coats. And your forecast tonight for Cleveland about 42, but inland upper 30s again. We'll go 52 Wednesday, cloud, sun, mix and cool. And here's your 5-day forecast. 52, look at Thursday, rain, 48. Friday could get a little sleet and wet snow mixing in with a few showers, 41. Climbing back up into the 50s for Sunday, but that'll be short-lived. We'll see highs only in the 30s by Tuesday with a chance there for scattered snow showers. Say it isn't so. Back to Ted and Lee.
Of course it's so. It's November.
I wish it weren't so. Okay, Mark, thank you. Our election night coverage continues.
Yeah, we might even squeeze in some sports. Stay with us.
Purchase 4 select Goodyear tires and receive a $50 U.S. savings bond.
We've just confirmed our top story. Kohl's 50% off sale is giving shoppers an early start on holiday shopping.
Kohl's 50% off sale is this Tuesday and Wednesday only from 7 a.m. to midnight. Save 50% on hundreds of items store-wide, like sweaters, outerwear, and sleepwear for the family. Save 50% on items for the home, like solid bath towels, all candles, and all down comforters. Plus, senior citizens take 15% off. Kohl's 50% off sale is this Tuesday and Wednesday only.
Fits your wallet, schedule, style.
You're gonna love it. Hi, I'm Tony Schiano. You're gonna love it at Tops, and this little sign is a big reason why. It's one of our thousands of weekly bonus buys. But what is a bonus buy? You're gonna love this. Tops negotiates reduced prices with the people who make your favorite brands. We pass the savings on to you, penny for penny. When you see the bonus buy difference at checkout, well,
You're gonna love it.
Tops Markets. You're gonna love it. You're gonna love it.
Time Warner Digital Cable lets you watch what you want when you want. Roadrunner High Speed Online lets you get online at speeds up to 70 times faster than dial-up and up to twice as fast as DSL standard package. Let Time Warner Cable put time on your side.
Save on Roadrunner today. Get free installation plus only $29.95 a month for your first 6 months. Call now.
Time Warner Cable. Now anything's possible.
Are checking fees eating away at your small business profits? The solution is Key. Let Key Bank take the bite out of fees with free business checking. You can also save with free online banking and a free business debit card. So don't wait. Get a free checking account with some teeth in it. Only at Key Bank.
The biggest names in food are coming to Cleveland.
Come see me at Food Network's Great Big Food Show.
Meet your favorite Food Network stars like Alton Brown, Mark Summers,
and me, Mario Batali. We'll have live cooking demonstrations and book signings.
Plus, taste exciting new foods and try innovative products from hundreds of exhibitors. It's all happening November 12th through the 14th at the IX Center. Food Network's Great Big Food Show. Buy your advance tickets now and save. Visit GreatBigFoodShow.com.
And back to politics for a few more minutes before we get to sports this evening. One of the congressional races here in Northeast Ohio we've been closely watching throughout the campaign is the 14th district.
And that race pitted Republican incumbent Steve LaTourette against Democratic newcomer Capri Cafaro. After weeks of mudslinging in a highly charged media campaign, LaTourette has defeated Cafaro 63% to 37%, that is with 78% of the precincts now reporting. News Channel 5's Tracy Carlos talked to the winner within the past hour tonight. Tracy?
Lee, the battle for the 14th congressional seat got downright nasty, as you just said, between Republican incumbent Steve LaTourette and Democratic challenger Capri Cafaro. At the LaTourette camp tonight, supporters watched the numbers come in, and the incumbent congressman became the projected winner. LaTourette made his way into the victory celebration just before 11 o'clock tonight, and he thanked supporters for their hard-fought campaign.
I want to thank everybody that stood out in the rain today. Good. I want to thank everybody that made a phone call. I want to thank everybody that licked an envelope, put a stamp on, went door to door, tubed at 6 o'clock in the morning. It's because of that effort. And it's because at the end of the day, the people in the 14th Congressional District know you can't buy a seat in Congress. It's based upon experience. It's based upon what you do.
So tonight, voters in the 14th Congressional District appear to be sending LaTourette back to Capitol Hill. In the newsroom, Tracy Carlos, News Channel 5.
Okay, Tracy, thanks very much. With us all evening long, giving us their political insights, have been two political science professors from area colleges.
And let's go back over to Leon Bibb now, who will be introducing them, actually reintroducing our guests to us tonight. Leon.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Lee. We are calling them our two wise men because of their insights. Joining me, our political science professors, Joseph White, sitting next to me, of Case Western Reserve University, and Ron Kahn of Oberlin College, both political science professors. Who's going to win Ohio is the key.
And I don't think anybody will know for a good long time. It's going to come down to absentee ballots. It looks super close right now. One of the things that the media haven't been saying is that the exit polls sort of suggested that Kerry would win. But if you look at the totals you're seeing on TV, looks like Bush is going to win.
What do you think, Ron?
I think it's going to come down to the districts where the long lines continue. I think it's going to come down to the degree to which, whose supporters stayed out the longest and had the most new voters. Also, a lot of those votes are not from Cuyahoga County. Yeah. And I have an idea that the numbers there are so strong that I think Kerry's going to eke out a win, but it's more than a toss-up. I'll give it a 52-48.
Take 10
Kerry.
seconds and finish it off, Joe.
Yeah, not only aren't the votes from Cuyahoga County, but the votes that haven't come in from Cuyahoga County are from the east side. So if I had to guess, I'd be with him. I'd say 52-48%. I'd say good chance that Kerry will win, but we just don't know.
Okay, thank you very much. Two of our wise men, they're giving you their wisdom right here on News Channel 5. Thank you very much. Ron Kahn and Joseph White, both university professors from the area here. Lee, Ted.
Thank you, Leon. As we have been telling you throughout the day and night, huge numbers of voters packed polls across Northeast Ohio today.
This is a pretty good surprise, really. In Oberlin to the southwest of Cleveland, some voters waited up to 6 hours to vote. News Channel 5's Paul Kiska is live in the community of Oberlin right now, where voting just wrapped up, a little over an hour ago, you're telling me, Paul?
Yeah, it's true. Hard to believe, isn't it? But they waited that long, and hundreds and hundreds of students from Oberlin College basically overwhelmed a polling place just down the street from the college tonight. A small church, First Church, several hundred students showed up to vote, and that meant that they had to wait anywhere from 3 to 6 hours to vote tonight. The line wrapped around the church 2.5 times at times, and you would think with that there would be a lot of complaining, but just the opposite. The students say it was a party-like atmosphere. Now you're going to hear two college students describe the scene there tonight, a poll worker as well, and then at the end you'll see how the students passed the time tonight.
And it was incredibly long. I played Uno. Then I played Catchphrase. There was a lot of free food. People came around, like little kids came around with their trick-or-treat candy and offered it to us. So it wasn't that bad. It was just an incredibly long line.
It was, I would say, almost a festive atmosphere. There was food everywhere. People were coming around with hot chocolate and coffee and things like that. And it was actually a very exciting atmosphere because we know that Ohio is so close. And I think everybody actually enjoyed waiting there almost.
It's kind of a party atmosphere.
Many of them were very excited about voting for the first time. It was just very refreshing to see this many people fired up about voting.
They've got some talent over there at the First Church tonight, where they usually at that precinct get about 500 voters usually. Tonight, more than 1,100, many of them college students, showed up. Reporting live in Oberlin tonight from Oberlin College, Paul Kiska, News Channel 5.
Okay, Paul, thanks very much. And we have a couple of updates right now. ABC News with some projections about the state of Florida and California.
California going to Senator Kerry, which is no surprise. I don't think either candidate even campaigned there because they knew that was mostly a Democratic state. Senator Kerry has wrapped it up.
And they are projecting the state of Florida for President Bush, a very key battleground, of course. And at this point, they're tallying 237 electoral votes for President Bush, 188 for Senator Kerry. And it indeed may come down to Ohio.
Right, because the magic number once again is 270. So if the president's got 237, Ohio is going to be likely the determining factor at goodness knows what hour tonight. Plus, as the professor is saying, counting all those absentee votes probably later on tomorrow.
Indeed. Well, Chris, what have you got to say?
I think I figured it out.
Okay.
What's that?
Politics and sports are basically the same thing. If you score more points or more votes,
you win.
That's
you win,
exactly
right?
how it works.
And guess what? Even in Florida. Well, the basketball New Year tipped off tonight with the defending champ Detroit Pistons beating Houston 87-79. The Cavaliers open the season tomorrow against Indiana, who will be shorthanded to say the least. No Jermaine O'Neal, no Reggie Miller, or Jeff Foster. They're all out. The Cavs are telling me tonight tickets are still available for that home opener, which starts tomorrow. And a programming note, our battle in Baltimore kicks off this Sunday from 7 to 8:30. You can catch the game right here on News Channel 5. The Browns and Ravens, round 2. In game 1, Browns beat up on Jamal Lewis. He only had 57 yards rushing on 20 carries. Now, those numbers tell you he didn't have a good day at the office.
Yeah. What, is that it?
That's it. Done. I'm going to watch you guys work now.
Are you?
Not me.
Okay, thank you,
All right,
Chris.
guys.
Let's get an updated look at the presidential race for the nation right now.
And at this moment, we have President Bush with 52% of the vote. This is across the country, and 48% for Mr. Kerry.
And once again, the state of California just went for Senator Kerry. The state of Florida, hugely contested, just went for President Bush. That picks up an extra 20-some votes for President Bush. He has now a total of 237 electoral votes to 188 for Senator Kerry, getting pretty close to 270, which is the magic number.
Well, that is it for News Channel 5 at 11. We are not going anywhere, and we'll no doubt be back with further updates.
We will be here throughout the night. If any major problems happen, we now rejoin ABC's live election night coverage. Thank you very much for joining us for your election returns to News Channel 5.
And as George said, right now, there are states that are still out there, but everything will pivot off of Ohio.
I don't want to get you too far ahead of yourself, but have you had a chance to look at the exit polls from Florida and give us some indication of how this anticipated victory was constituted?
I have, and unfortunately, I left my notes back there.
Go ahead, get them. I'll be happy to wait for you.
Vamp, I'll be right back.
George, we talked a little bit about before about how Florida is in many ways a microcosm of the country. We used to focus much more on the demographics of Ohio than we do in the demographics of Florida today.
Look at Florida. The south of Florida, Miami-Dade, Broward County is culturally very much like the Northeast. A lot of transplants from the Northeast. The Panhandle is very much like the rest of the South, the rural South, and the middle of Florida down that I-4 corridor. Right. Tampa, Orlando is a varied mixture of the whole of all of the country, and lots of new immigrants there as well.
New immigrants, and one of the other things that was interesting, Senator Kerry went there with a very powerful, what he thought was a very powerful message about health care, and how the president was not going to secure health care in the way that he believed.
And we've seen that a huge majority of in our exit polls tonight of Americans are concerned about health care and health care costs, but maybe they were not convinced that Senator Kerry had the right answer.
Mr. Halpern is back again. Yes, Mark.
So in Florida, obviously there's lots of ways to divide the state. Hispanics a huge part of the state of Florida. 15% of the total of
Have we got graphics to go with these, you think? Okay.
Cover me right now. 15% of the total were Hispanic, and that's about the same as in 2000, but the president this time did better than he did last time. 2004, the president, 54% of the Hispanic vote in Florida. and 46% for Senator Kerry. 4 years ago, the president barely won the Hispanic vote in Florida. It was 49 to 48%. And a lot of that for the president in Florida for a Republican, not surprising. Cuban Americans, a big part of the Hispanic population there, went by 3-1 to the president. Another big thing for the president in Florida, as it will be, I think, in almost every state he wins tonight, terrorism. Top issue cited is concern for Floridians. 23% cited it, and the president won that vote overwhelmingly. 87% of the voters who said terror was the most important issue to them voted for the president. Only 13% for Senator
That's Kerry. quite an astonishing difference, and I wonder if the Kerry campaign ever anticipated that it could have been quite so dramatic.
Dramatic in Florida, and again, it'll be interesting to see in these battleground states that kind of difference. Florida economy, even with the hurricanes they suffered, better than, say, in Ohio. So terror moves higher up the top priority for Floridians.
One observation about the hurricane. It was said that after the hurricane, which was in Bush country to some extent in Florida, that the Bush campaign had a very difficult time campaigning. It does not seem to have hurt him based on this projection.
Well, look, it'll be interesting to see the returns in those counties on the western part of the state, on the coast that did have a lot of damage, did have people distracted. Overall, though, the Bush campaign, obviously, incredibly happy to win Florida no matter what.
All right, many thanks. Let's go back to our live update. And here it is. The state of Florida, ABC News projects, is now going to go to Mr. Bush in a very, very closely fought campaign. ABC's Bob Woodruff is there. Bob?
Well, Peter, you know, we've been watching this develop for some time, and you saw the Democrats early on tonight looking very optimistic because of these high turnout numbers that they were looking at. They said they were outperforming their time in 2000 in the counties that had leaned towards Al Gore. But then suddenly there was a turn, and what you saw was that relatively Democratic-leaning area around Miami, Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach counties, were not turning out the numbers that the Democrats hoped and knew that Kerry needed to get. He needed, according to Democratic estimates, about 350,000 at least of a margin over George Bush in those counties to win. The Republicans were saying all along for the last several days that Kerry needed at least 450,000. The numbers were looking soft for the last hour or two, Kerry getting just barely over 300,000. So they knew that was slipping away from John Kerry. They also knew that the absentee ballots, about 1.1 million of them are outstanding, haven't been counted yet. You know, this is a registration state, so they know that these absentee ballots come from particular voters, and Republicans outnumber the Democrats on the absentee side. Also, one of the big Republican counties on the west around Naples, Collier County, has been having trouble with some of their machines, and they haven't kicked out any numbers yet. So George Bush was leading by quite a margin. The Democrats could see that these factors were all working against them, and so that's why Mark Halper mentioned they weren't going to fight this. This call looks pretty clean.
Many thanks, Bob. I want to have a look at Bob Woodruff in Florida. Take a look at Reagan headquarters in Washington, which we have had a camera in all night. In fact, well, they're a little calmer than they were just a couple of minutes ago, but there was a huge, huge uproar there. I think that's a little mariachi even we hear in the background in honor of the Latino vote in Florida, perhaps, but there was a huge burst of applause and enthusiasm when the projection went for Mr. Bush in Florida. Our coverage of this extraordinary election will continue in just a moment.
Vote 2004, Election Night. Brought to you by Jeep Trail Rated Capability. Don't go off-road without it. This ABC News special will continue in a moment.
With faster acceleration than a BMW 325xi and an Audi TT, the all-new Hemi-powered Jeep Grand Cherokee conquers the road like a sports car. And with our exclusive QuadraDrive 2 four-wheel drive system, it conquers everything else like a trail-rated Jeep 4x4.
Oh, Capital One.
Check your mail for the Capital One No Hassle Island giveaway. Look inside and see if you've instantly won your own private island or one of hundreds of island getaways.
What's in your wallet?
This holiday season, Tim Allen is putting a whole new face.
I got Botox.
On Christmas. On November 24th, grab the tree.
Are you sure this isn't illegal?
Are you a cop?
String the lights. And hide the cat. Tim Allen. Jamie Lee Curtis. Christmas with the Cranks. Rated PG.
Your face. It's like it's frozen or something.
In theaters November 24th.
Next Tuesday, ABC presents one of the most emotional blues ever. A partner gone but not forgotten returns to help a friend in his darkest hour.
So here I am, in the flesh, so to speak. Something like that.
Jimmy Smits guest stars.
I never got over not having you in the world. I miss you too.
The year's most unforgettable episode.
Tell me what to do, Bobby.
NYPD Blue. Next Tuesday, 10/9 Central, only on ABC.
This is the 2004 vote. Once again from ABC News election headquarters, Peter Jennings.
There's no such thing as a small mistake. We respect that. It's not about Florida, by the way, not a huge presidential mistake, but we did make a mistake in discussing the Congress. Koki, would you like to clear it up?
Apparently, our political unit jumped the gun, and Chris Shays has not lost in Connecticut. It is too close to call. Connecticut races often go very late at night.
Okay, very many thanks, Dr. Roberts. So Chris Shays of Connecticut has not been defeated, as we were discussing a little earlier on. And by the way, our political unit has been fabulous throughout the year, so we give them at least one mistake. Jake Tapper, issues? Jake runs our ballot watch desk, and because I think some people in the country may be a little bit surprised to see that Florida went as well as it appears to have. Bring us up to date on sort of ballot discrepancies in general.
Well, one of the things to keep in mind is that Florida, after the 2000 fiasco, went through a total overhaul of its voting methods and systems. First of all, obviously, it outlawed the butterfly ballot. That was a confusing ballot in Palm Beach County. And then, of course, also it got rid of punch card ballots. The entire state is devoid of punch card ballots. And if you look at the state, these green ones represent the 15 of the most populous counties in the state, represent about 50% of the population, and they all vote with electronic touchscreen voting, which, of course, a lot of people, its proponents and adherents, say is a much smoother way of voting than punch card ballots. Let's take a look at Ohio, though, which we have yet to call. Ohio is a state that they tried to bring in the electronic voting machines, but they were not able to do so because there were concerns about security and concerns about not having a paper trail. And Ohio, this yellow indicates that Ohio generally votes, about more than 70% of its population, with punch card ballots.
Many thanks, Jake, very much. I want to go and ask George Will and Fareed Zakaria about something, because with President Bush, us projecting President Bush in Florida, comes into question again the commander-in-chief and the war and terrorism, but especially the war. You and I were talking a little earlier about Fallujah, and I've just had another email from Iraq saying there's bombing going on in Fallujah. Commander-in-chief, wartime election.
Well, we're having a referendum. As any election where the incumbent's on the ballot, it's a referendum on him. So we're having a referendum on the commander-in-chief on the eve of what looks like a major military offensive. Peter, a few days ago, we passed a melancholy milestone that went really unremarked, and that is our war in Iraq, which is still ongoing, has now lasted longer than U.S. involvement in World War I. No incumbent president has ever been defeated during wartime. We've had two presidents, however, who quit rather than run in wartime. Harry Truman in '52 because of Korea, Lyndon Johnson in '68 because of Vietnam, and historians will argue that had Sherman not captured Atlanta in a timely manner before the 1864 election, Abraham Lincoln might have lost.
I was covering the Lyndon Johnson campaign the night that happened. Bobby almost fell off the stage. Michael Beschloss, you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I think George is absolutely right, but you know, we're talking about Lincoln during the Civil War and Franklin Roosevelt during World War II. If you were an American during either of those two wars, there would have been no doubt that you were living in a nation in wartime. Here we are at a time of a war on terrorism, also a time where we have been fighting wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Yet, if you go to many streets in this country, people are not minute by minute aware of the fact that we are at war. So in one sense, what we're seeing tonight is a test of that idea, whether we do turn out presidents during a time of war. And I think one of the questions that many of us have had has been, is this the same kind of war that we've had before, which has tended to protect the president?
I've said this once before, so I don't want to make too much of it, but those of us who live in New York City do not walk down the street every day and run into people who've got family in Iraq. But you go anywhere else in the country, Fareed, as I know you have when you traveled, and you almost invariably meet somebody who's got a son or a daughter in Iraq. And the war just seems much more real in many parts of the country.
It does seem much more real, not really because of the high numbers of casualties, because let's face it, compared with Korea and Vietnam, in both cases of which the incumbent president chose not to run, the number of casualties in Iraq is, in relative terms, lower. But there are communities from which it has been drawn disproportionately. And what's unusual about it is many of these communities are often traditionally Republican communities. So the president is trying to make the case that the war in Iraq is worth it, even in the communities from which there has been the greatest
And
loss.
what's interesting, George, is that the war itself has become one of these character moral issues, and people in different demographic groups have voted for it quite dramatically.
That's absolutely right. It's also the case that when someone is killed in Iraq in a small or rural community, it's not a one-day story. It's a week-long story because people know that it's an extended family, as it were. So it's a much bigger impact, as well as the fact, as you say, that our casualties are not spread evenly over the country. They have to be concentrated in certain areas.
Not to take a shot at the president, but I wonder if the president had asked for greater sacrifice from Americans at a time of war, whether or not we might all feel on this election night that we were more involved in a wartime election. Our coverage will continue in just a moment.
Is calling ABC's Lost TV's most addictive new drama. For the stranded survivors on this mysterious island,
We got your help.
the dangers are real.
Where is he? Is he alive?
But for one young man to survive,
You're not yourself, right? You don't know me.
he must first overcome his obsession
Constant feeling like this. Struggle is nature's way of strengthening.
and conquer the demons within.
I want my drugs back.
Dominic Monaghan stars in an all-new Lost. Wednesday, 8/7 Central, only on E!
Rain ending overnight, a low of 39.
It's time to call your local Carrier expert for your furnace performance check and cleaning.
There is one name that defines luxury home building in Northeast Ohio. Petros Homes is an established industry leader with a reputation for innovative designs in the finest communities. Now offering homes in Brecksville, Broadview Heights, Hinckley, Ridgefield, Avon, Seven Hills, and Pepper Pike. Petros Homes is building homes everywhere you want to be. Visit a Petros Homes community today and experience integrity and lifestyle living at its finest.
Now at Playhouse Square Center through November 7th only. Tickets at the box office, playhousesquare.com, or call 216-241-6000.
I'm a medical activist. I take an active role in my medical care. But last month I got medicine from a specialist and I forgot to mention that I was already taking another medication. Luckily, Aetna has MedQuery. They check medications for compatibility, so if something's not right, they let my doctor know so she can tell me. Now it's me, my doctor, and Aetna. Together, we're a force to be reckoned with.
Ask about Aetna at work. We want you to know. Aetna.
Diamonds. The Jewelry Factory has thousands of diamonds imported direct from site holders, most with GIA or EGL certs, laser inscribed and guaranteed the lowest price. Compare Howard's half-carat solitaires for $4.99 with the Jewelry Factory's for $2.99. 1-carat ISI diamonds are $2,900 and 1-carat studs are $3.99. Our diamonds are never milky. They are hand-chosen for brilliance. Only the Jewelry Factory offers you a double value and money-back guarantee. Buy Factory Direct, the Jewelry Factory in Cleveland.
There are a million reasons why the SBC Yellow Pages is the most used phone book. SBC Yellow Pages, life's most used book.
A snowman just isn't a snowman without snow. The News Channel 5 School Closing Network. We're ready. Are you?
This is an ABC News special. The 2004 vote. Today, all across the country, Americans cast their vote. And tonight, it all comes down to this: election night. Now reporting from ABC News election headquarters in New York, Peter Jennings.
It's fascinating in a way because one moment things seem to be going so fast, but of course, on the other hand, the country is suspended in midair at the moment, having had only this one great battleground state report in, leaving it. Take a look at the map as of now, with 237 electoral votes for Mr. Bush. He only needs to get to 270. I shouldn't actually say only, because it's going to be a long way if you don't get it right. And Mr. Kerry has 188 electoral votes. But take a second now as you look at the map and look at the popular vote. You recall, of course, that in 2000, electoral vote for one man, popular vote for the other. Here is the popular vote overall as of now. Mr. Bush is currently getting about 51% of the popular vote, 41,800,000 people almost, and Mr. Kerry's getting about 48% of the popular vote. But take a look at as we go through one state after the other. First of all, in Ohio, with 70% of the precincts reporting, Mr. Bush is getting 52% of the popular vote, and Mr. Kerry is getting 48%. In New Mexico, very tightly fought race, as John Donvan reported a while ago. Only 65% of the precincts reporting, 51% of the popular vote for Mr. Bush, and 48% for Mr. Kerry. Mr. Bush and his campaign this year, Colorado the same, 64% of the precincts reporting. Take a look at that. Mr. Bush this year in his campaign were, as much as anything, of course determined to win the election, but determined to win the popular vote. If Mr. Bush wins tonight, and he wins the popular vote, members of the Republican Party establishment will regard that as legitimization in the fullest sense. One more state to look at the popular vote now, still undecided in terms of who won it. Here's a case where Mr. Kerry has more of the popular vote at the moment, with 62% of the precincts reporting. And available to us now in Boston is another former White House secretary who came back to the Kerry campaign, and by almost all reports has made a huge difference to the campaign. I don't know why I'm trying to say something polite about you, Mr. McCurry. Mike McCurry in Boston. Tell me, first of all, what went wrong in Florida?
Well, look, it was a very close state, and let's remember the president's brother is the governor of that state. We had a very strong organization there and a very closely fought race there. I am not in a position right now to say that we are throwing in the towel there, but obviously that's a state, if we lose, we're going to have to make up elsewhere. So we go along in the map, as you have just done, to the states of Ohio, to the upper Midwest states of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa, where we feel very confident that a strong organization is going to be able to bring the vote in for us tonight. So there's an electoral math that works for us absent Florida, and we'll be watching very closely to see how these states develop as this day turns into night and we go into additional hours of counting.
Mike, you had a reputation when you were press secretary to President Clinton of giving him the cold, hard facts in a direct manner. Now tell us what you have to do. I mean, look where the president is, 237 electoral votes. What does Mr. Kerry, your candidate, have to do now, or you're going to have to deliver some cold, hard facts to him?
Well, we're going to have to win Ohio, and then Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin are going to have to come in the way we think they will come in because of our strong organization. Absent that, we're going to have to look to some of those western states, but that's really the formula, and the formula has been, I think, Peter, pretty clear, given where we've been campaigning and how hard we've been working. Look, I'll tell you one thing I'm sure that you've reported already tonight, that we've worked right up until the very end doing interviews with television stations around the country, precisely because we wanted to make sure we turned out a very large vote in those states that are so critical, in the upper Midwest and then out west. So we're going to be watching those results very, very closely as this long evening continues.
We have indeed reported that your candidate tonight, I think, spoke to 33 different local television stations in the upper Midwest. What sort of shape is he in after all that?
Well, he took energy as the campaign went on. John Kerry is one of the most fiercely competitive candidates that I've ever seen. And almost as the hours got longer and the work got harder, he took energy from that. And all along the way, I think he finished about as strong as you can finish. And just really, as he evidenced, sitting in that chair for 4 hours this afternoon, was determined to do his very best to reach the voters of America.
Mike, tell us about the good luck barn jacket which the president is the senator is wearing.
I'm sure that all voters in the country got very used to that mustard-colored barn jacket. That's a good luck jacket that goes all the way back to the Iowa caucus that brought him victory on the night of that caucus, and I think he wore it right up to the end, knowing and hoping that it would make him the president-elect. We still think that's going to be the lucky jacket of the evening.
And what did he have in the pockets?
He had a Buckeye from Ohio, a four-leaf clover, and a guitar pick from Bruce Springsteen. That's about as much luck as one can have.
And now, have you ever seen a bigger campaign event than the one that Senator Kerry did with Bruce Springsteen? Did you ask yourself a little bit, did Springsteen get him here? Did the candidate get him here?
Well, that was extraordinary. It was a big turnout, but you know, that was about the enthusiasm we see from young people who apparently have turned out in very large numbers tonight. That was really an anthem to the change that America wants. I think throughout this country, obviously a very close election, but enough people were willing to say we really need to change the direction of this country. That's what they were out there for, in addition to listening to great music.
Okay, now finally, I do not expect you to give us any bad news at this particular occasion, but tell us the one thing that you've looked at tonight which really pleases you in terms of the results so far.
The one thing that pleases us is, well, two things. The extraordinary increase in the number of Democrats who are willing to help the party financially. We've built a very strong financial base for this party that will be really important as John Kerry begins to govern and begins to fight for his agenda. And then the second thing is the large number of people who are voting. Peter, it's extraordinary that this percentage of Americans have turned out, paid close attention to the issues, and have gone to vote. I think that speaks well to our democracy, and I think probably the Bush campaign would join in applauding that outcome.
Mike McCurry of the Kerry campaign, thanks very much for joining us from Boston this evening. Just remind people, when they look at the map now, that so far on this map, the red states and the blue states, there's a whole debate about whether or not we should have even chosen red and blue in the first place, these are the same states as were in this position in the year 2000. So in one respects, nothing totally dramatic has happened yet, George Stephanopoulos, in order to alter the outcome from 2000.
It's amazing. They're following almost in exactly the same pattern that they fell in 2000, and they're in exactly the same pattern right now. And Mike McCurry was quite honest there. He basically said that John Kerry has to have a big change from 2000 in order to win this race. He must win the state of Ohio.
Just look what he's got to win Ohio. He's got to win Michigan. He's got to win Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa.
Well, yes.
You're not so sure about what, Michigan?
No, Michigan still, you know, he has to win that, that's right. And of course, he's also hoping for Washington and Oregon, Hawaii, New Hampshire. That could get him up to 278 electoral votes. But then President Bush, if he flipped over New Mexico, could bring it down to 271. The margin could come to those tiny states, New Mexico, New Hampshire. But in order to get there, John Kerry has to start out by winning Ohio and those states in the upper Midwest.
Let me go back to reality here. This is the electoral vote of reality here. Mr. Bush, 237. Kerry, 188. Just a little couple things I realize that may not be the most important issues of the day. Mike McCurry talked about getting out young people. Two things have happened this year, which really happened in the Democratic primaries. The raising of money on the internet, which Howard Dean struck gold, and the extraordinary participation of young people in the primary campaign. I wonder if that works for the Democrats in the upper Midwest.
Well, that's going to be one of the big questions. Minnesota, it could. They have same-day registration. Wisconsin, you saw those huge crowds for John Kerry and Bruce Springsteen in the closing days of the campaign. Madison, Wisconsin, of course, a huge university town. But the question is always going to, will it be enough? to put him over the top. Even if you've increased the numbers a great deal and he's winning those votes, will it be enough to put him over the top? We just don't know that yet.
I remember at the beginning of this campaign, or the beginning just before election night, we were all of us saying to a variety of people around the country, well, it may go in to tomorrow, and it may go to the day after that. And some among us, she'll go unnamed at the moment, thought this, well, maybe we'd know this by 10:30 or 11:30 in the night.
I thought we'd know it tonight.
George will. George, I suppose. George, what do you think at this point?
Well, that was the wish being the father to the thought. But having been magnificently wrong, it seems to me now we are in a moment of an extended pregnant pause in this evening while we wait for the states that we've been waiting for all along.
Okay, so while we wait for the states we've been waiting for all along, I want to go back to Mark Halperin. And there are a couple of things, Mark, I'd love it if you would do. First of all, we've talked a little bit about Iraq. I can't see what... Well, go ahead. You talk about Ohio first. You've got that up.
Peter, right now, if you're working for President Bush or John Kerry, there's only one thing you're focused on. There are other states out there, but Ohio will almost certainly decide this election. If you talk to top strategists in Ohio or in Washington or in Boston, this is all they're thinking about is what votes are left to come in Ohio, what's still out there, and which side is going to benefit. As you showed just a minute ago, President Bush is leading in the popular vote that's in, but what we've got to all figure out is where is the vote still out?
Just before you move from there, people look at that huge red area, and it pays to remind them that it's a little emptier than the blue areas.
That's right. This is the map of 2000. This is how Al Gore did against President Bush. The red areas are the areas of strongest support for the president in 2000. Those light pink areas are the areas that President Bush did slightly less well in. And then the blue and the darker blue were the areas that Democrats were strong. President Bush won Ohio by a little bit. This is the area of greatest strength for the Democrats. This is the area of greatest strength for Republicans. And again, right now the question is, where is the missing vote? Does it come in a way that allows John Kerry to win? We don't know. We know both strategists for both sides. Most of the evening we're confident. Right now, we can say the polls are closed. We're not influencing anything. Right now, the president's strategists appear to us to be a little bit more confident that as the additional vote comes in, the president will maintain his popular vote lead, winning Ohio's electoral votes. And again, slow down. That is the most critical thing right now.
And that's a very good point you've just made, and we should make it again. The polls are closed, so anything we say about the campaign strategist's point of view at the moment, we do not believe will influence matters. But now, we talked a little bit about Iraq. Take us through, if you would, the exit polls on Iraq.
Big issue, and again, this is not just a game of who can win politically. This is an issue of who is going to do well on the issues that were important. Iraq, a huge issue, as we've said, a nation at war. We asked people, did you approve of President Bush's decision nationally? We asked people to go to war, and again, the exit poll suggested 49% approved, 47% disapproved, an obvious split in the country. How is Iraq going now?
Hold it. Okay, how's Iraq going now?
Going well, 42%, badly, 53%. Now, on the one hand, you could say a majority thinks it's going badly, but given what's gone on in Iraq, given the American deaths, given all the problems that even people in the administration have sometimes admitted to, that's not a bad place for the president to be. And finally, do you consider Iraq part of the war on terror? The president has tried to link them throughout this campaign. Senator Kerry has argued not just that they're disconnected, but in fact they work against each other. Part of the war on terror, majority, 52%, separate 44%. That's an important number for the president, obviously. And then finally, has the Iraq war improved the long-term security of the United States? Again, a mixed signal from the country. Yes, 44, majority says no. So the country is divided on this issue. Probably most of the people who supported the president on the war support him in this election, but a divided country in many ways, including on many of these questions about the war.
One of the things we know, of course, about whomever is elected president, that Iraq is a huge burden on them and on the country in the months and perhaps the years ahead. Our coverage of Election Night 2004 will continue in just a moment.
Vote 2004, Election Night. Brought to you by Chrysler. Inspiration comes standard. This ABC News special will continue in a moment.
Can inspiration make the town and country even more amazing? Yes. Will it let you travel in luxury and style? Sure. Can it find a place for everything and put everything in its place? As the only minivan with stow-and-go seating and storage? Of course. The amazing new Chrysler Town & Country, starting at $21,185. Chrysler, inspiration comes standard.
There's never been a better time to talk with your doctor about Ambien, because now you can try Ambien free. Visit Ambien.com for details.
Gotcha! That was a good one. Honey, did you get it?
What would you do on your own private island? Check your mail for the Capital One No Hassle Island giveaway. You could instantly win your own island for one of hundreds of island getaways.
What's in your wallet?
Critics across the country agree the #1 romantic comedy in America is pure entertainment. It's the feel-good movie of the year.
Dance with me.
Shall We Dance? Rated PG-13. Now playing everywhere.
Kevin, what's it like being drafted by the Clothing Drive?
It's a huge thrill. I'm just excited to help the people of Tennessee.
They're already hyping you for most valuable volunteer. How are you dealing with the pressure?
I still put on my pants one leg at a time, except when I'm done wearing them. I donate them.
Get involved. It's what matters.
Live coverage of Vote 2004 continues. Once again, Peter Jennings.
Welcome back to our coverage. Just looking at the list of things we've actually already talked about in the course of this evening and the list of things that we'll be talking about endlessly, I think, whatever the result of this campaign. The lessons learned of 2004, conventions certainly matter. John Kerry certainly helped himself with his convention, or sorry, Mr. Bush helped himself with his convention. Mr. Kerry did not necessarily do so. And there will be, I think, George Stephanopoulos, a big question when this is over, however it goes, whether or not Mr. Kerry did well by himself, spending so much of his convention on his war record.
It's already been a subject of great debate. I mean, in some ways, people have said, yes, Senator Kerry needed to do that. People needed to know about his war record, and that gave them confidence that he could be commander-in-chief. It was necessary, but was it sufficient? And the biggest criticism Senator Kerry has gotten from Democrats and others is that he didn't spend enough time in that convention speech laying out his plans for the future.
ABC News is now in a position to make another projection. We go out to the far west to Oregon now. In Oregon, as you know, people voted entirely by mail. There was actually no voting on today, Election Day, which you may have found ironic, but that's the way it is in Oregon. The state has not voted for a Republican since Ronald Reagan in 1984. ABC News now projects that the state of Oregon is going to go to Mr. Kerry. Mr. Kerry has 195 electoral votes and Mr. Bush has 237. The only state to vote completely by mail. The voters have had 19 days up there to send in their ballots, and most people in Oregon think this is fairly sophisticated way of going about things. But it's really interesting, George, if you vote by mail or if you vote absentee or you vote from absentee from any distance, look at how much you miss in the waning days of the campaign.
Days. And this time around, there was no huge October surprise. There was some question whether or not that Osama bin Laden tape would be at the end. There was no huge October surprise. But imagine if you voted, and you could have done that in Oregon before the debates. Those were a big shift in this campaign.
Exactly. Now, I have the great luxury from this chair of asking questions on my mind, but I want to do something which I think will please my colleagues out there. I want to talk to three of them now, at the moment. Linda Douglas, John Cochran, who's at the Cheney headquarters in Washington, and Pierre Thomas, and just see, first of all, in the case of Linda and John, what's on your mind?
Well, I think what's on my mind is just the sense of how, first of all, this is such an anxiety-making time for the aides, the congressional aides that I've been talking to in both parties. You don't know which party is going to, the presidency is going to be coming from, but everyone is talking about how amazingly democracy is working tonight, Peter. These long, long lines, people going to great lengths and a lot of inconvenience and trouble to vote in this country. There's a lot of talk about that, and a lot of talk about maybe changing the system, maybe making Election Day a holiday, maybe keeping the polls open for 24 hours. It may be like this from now on. People have really understood that your vote counts.
But you said something to me in an email a little while ago about Congress revisiting the governing election laws and really making it a national holiday. Do you think there's a serious move for that up there?
Well, it's always very difficult to change the system in Congress, even after everything that happened in 2000. Even when Democrats were in charge of the Senate, it was still very hard to get through the reforms that are now in place that are governing a lot of the provisional ballot operations and voting and so forth. But there is at least a feeling that this is a moment you could capture where you preserved the value of a real democracy where everybody tries to vote. But if everybody tries to vote like this every time, it doesn't work very well. So you have to change the system.
My apologies. The one other thing you noted a short while ago, which I think a lot of us have noted, and that is the participation of the young people and the participation being particularly high. That I knew excited you.
Well, one of the reasons it's so exciting is that I think, as a parent of a young person, that they really feel connected to this election because they think their voices are being heard through blogs. Everybody can express an opinion, and everybody can hear that opinion through the internet, through the cable. They are really connected through their own communication systems that we all now are beginning to use. And I think that's made a big difference now.
Many thanks, Linda Douglas on Capitol Hill. Now let's go to John Cochran, who is at Cheney headquarters in Washington. What's on your mind, John, as you've been watching the evening?
Well, since I'm at Bush Cheney headquarters, I have to think of the president's odyssey over the past year. Privately, about a year ago, he was telling friends he thought this would be a tough election, but he said it would be a lot less tough than the last election. He said, listen, when I declared back in 1999, so many people thought I was stupid. I didn't know this. I didn't know that. Every time I went out in public, I was taking a chance. Somebody wanted to take a shot at me. Somebody wanted to say, this rube from Texas just isn't ready for the job. He said, I had to put up with that for a year and a half. Now I've been president, he said, for 4 years. I won't have to deal with that. I'll have Air Force One. It'll be somewhat easier. However, by the time Super Tuesday came earlier this year, and it was clear that John Kerry was going to be the candidate, Mr. Bush was saying privately, he's going to be tough. It's going to be the red states and the blue states will fight for what's in the middle. He said, I'm going to paint John Kerry as blue as I can. He's going to paint me as red as he can. He expected a tough, close election, and he's got it. And earlier this evening, here at Bush Cheney headquarters, they were very worried. They saw the exit polls. They thought they were in trouble. The actual vote counts came in, and they're feeling a whole lot better here and over at the White House, I think, Peter.
Many thanks, John Cochran. Appreciate it. And I'm going to get a quick minute from Pierre Thomas, who covers terrorism for us from Washington. And Pierre, this is not the final word. I promise I'll come back to you in a little while. But has it been, as far as the listening point has gone, a quiet night?
It has been extremely quiet. I've been on the phone with officials all evening, and they've been saying no news is good news. The FBI had been shaking the trees looking for any evidence of a specific plot. They were not able to find any, Peter, and one official said we can breathe a sigh of relief, but tomorrow morning we start worrying about the holiday season.
Thanks very much, Pierre. I promise I'll come back to you before the evening is over, but ABC now wants to make another projection. In the state of Colorado, with 9 electoral votes, ABC News is now in a position to project that Colorado, a battleground state as late as October, goes to Mr. Bush. Mr. Bush gets the state of Colorado. In many parts of the country, he gets Colorado. I tell that computer to ways from Sunday. In many parts of the country, stay tuned now for your local news. ABC News on a national level will, of course, continue. I'm Peter Jennings. Thanks for being with us.
A funny thing happens when your body doesn't sleep at night. Your mind zones out during the day. It's like going through life on autopilot, out of sync with the world around you. To help you sleep, there's Ambien, the #1 prescribed sleep aid in America. Ambien helps you fall asleep fast and stay asleep longer, so you wake up refreshed, not groggy. Until you know how Ambien will affect you, you shouldn't drive or operate machinery. Side effects may include drowsiness, dizziness, and diarrhea. You shouldn't take it with alcohol. All people taking sleep medicines have some risk of becoming dependent on the medicine. Prescription sleep aids are most often taken for 7 to 10 days as needed, or longer as advised by your doctor. Memory problems can usually be avoided by taking Ambien only when you can devote 7 to 8 hours to sleep. Talk to your doctor about Ambien. Ambien works like a dream.
Velocity meets versatility. The all-new Hemi-powered Dodge Magnum. Open it up from either end. Dodge Magnum with 5-star, the highest frontal crash test rating.
Now, live from News Channel 5, this Ohio Vote 2004 update.
Good morning, everyone. It's 12:25 Wednesday morning. I'm Ted Henry.
And I'm Lee Jordan. Thanks for staying with us tonight. We are going to get you right back to ABC's Peter Jennings in just a moment. The presidential race here in Ohio still not decided at this hour. Here's a quick look at the numbers in at this hour for Ohio, with 76% of the precincts reporting. President Bush, 51% of the vote. And Senator Kerry, 48% of the vote.
President Bush's lead of more than 100,000 votes here in Ohio all depends, of course, on Cuyahoga County.
So here now is a look at those numbers for the presidential race. And in Cuyahoga County, President Bush, 37% of the vote, and Senator Kerry, 63% of the vote. News Channel 5's Brad Harvey has been camped out at the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections. Brad, are there still enough votes uncounted there for Senator Kerry to win Ohio?
That is exactly the question, and that is exactly why we are the epicenter, as we have said again and again, of the political universe here tonight. It's why we're camped out at the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections, and here's why it is so significant. We've continued to watch these figures throughout the night, showing President Bush at about 52% to 48% for John Kerry. What is significant is the fact that the votes that are not counted are primarily those, many of those that are here in Cuyahoga County, a primarily Democratic-leaning county. And many of the votes that are still just coming into the building right now are actually from the east side of Cleveland. It's all about the volume of votes that are still out there to be counted. Are there enough left out there in this pool of voters here in Cuyahoga County to be able to bring John Kerry back up to a parity with President Bush? That's why everybody's watching this so close. Michael Vu just held up a sticky note here a moment ago saying that all of the votes are in the all the ballots are in the building to be counted, so we should know very soon, guys.
All right. He was saying earlier this evening, I think, that by 2 a.m. we should know. We're hoping maybe it'll be a little sooner.
Yeah, we all hope so.
Stay with News Channel 5 for continuing coverage of Vote 2004.
Now back to ABC's Peter Jennings right after this.
Why are more people watching News Channel 5? Because that's where you find the newsmakers.
President Bush's National Security Advisor, Dr. Condoleezza Rice.
We have the pleasure of welcoming former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright,
the president of the Cleveland chapter of the NAACP, George Forbes.
Mayor Jane Campbell joins us.
We are honored, I know I am, to have the coach. Bears fans know him as Dick Guy.
As we welcome the great actor to Live on 5.
The people, the stories, the difference. News Channel 5, on your side.
Meet Kent Clapp, Chairman, President, and CEO of Medical Mutual at the Corporate Club Breakfast at Executive Caterers at Landerhaven, Thursday, November 11th at 7:30 a.m. News Channel 5's Leon Bibb will interview Clapp on the issues faced by insurance companies and those who need insurance. For reservations, call Executive Caterers at Landerhaven. The Corporate Club is sponsored by National City Bank, The Plain Dealer, WTAM Radio, and News Channel 5. Food Network's Great Big Food Show is coming to Cleveland. See Alton Brown, Rachel Ray, Mario Batali, and Mark Summers. Sample great food and wine and shop at hundreds of exhibits. Tickets on sale now at GreatBigFoodShow.com. Great Big Food Show brought to you locally by News Channel 5.
Now it's 5:38. Thoughts of McGriddles make my stomach quake. For bacon, eggs, and cheese on sweet griddle cakes. Only takes one hand to put them all in my base. McDonald's, I'm loving it. McGriddles, breakfast for you, bedtime snack for me.
There is one name that defines luxury home building in Northeast Ohio. Petros Homes is an established industry leader with a reputation for innovative designs in the finest communities. Now offering homes in Brecksville, Broadview Heights, Hinckley, Ridgefield, Avon, Seven Hills, and Pepper Pike. Petros Homes is building homes everywhere you want to be. Visit a Petros Homes community today and experience integrity and lifestyle living at its finest.
If a lunar rover can get out of a ditch on the moon, if a tugboat can tow an enormous freighter, if an M1 tank can have a heavy-duty Allison transmission, then why can't your truck? At GMC, our engineers don't just ask questions, they have answers. The GMC Sierra line of pickups. Professional-grade engineering. It's not more than you need, just more than you're used to.
News Channel 5, your home for Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy!
This is an ABC News special. The 2004 vote. Today, all across the country, Americans cast their vote. And tonight, it all comes down to this: election night. Now reporting from ABC News election headquarters in New York, Peter Jennings.
Well, let's be even a little more specific than the announcer there. All across the country, indeed, people have been casting their ballots, and perhaps they've done so in record number. We will not know that tonight, and we probably will not know it for several days. And it all comes down to this, as he said. At the moment, it all comes down to Ohio. Let us remind you that Ohio has 20 electoral votes. John Kerry has been in Ohio so many times in the course of this campaign. He said at one point, I've been here a lot, but I'm not saying I've been here a lot, but I'm about to have my mail forwarded here. He was in Ohio 23 times since March. The big issue in Ohio has been the economy. A lot of other issues come into play, but the economy has been the really big issue in the campaign, with a lot of jobs, almost 300,000 lost since Mr. Bush became president. But now look at this map, because George Stephanopoulos is going to say the one absolutely crucial, all-important thing for Mr. Kerry.
If John Kerry doesn't win Ohio, he cannot become president, Peter. President Bush has 246 electoral votes right now. If you give him Ohio's 20 electoral votes, that gets him up to 266. Senator Kerry hasn't even competed in Alaska. That has 3 electoral votes. That's 269. At 269 to 269, and that's even if John Kerry sweeps the rest of the board, President Bush wins, because on a tie, the race would be thrown into the House of Representatives. There are 26.
There are more Republicans
than Democrats. More state houses controlled by Republicans than Democrats. More congressional delegations controlled by Republicans than Democrats. That's how it's decided in the House.
Now let's go through that just one more time. No offense intended. But if he doesn't win Ohio, he doesn't win the election, Mr. Kerry. If he wins Ohio, what else does he have to do?
He will have to win Michigan,
right,
and Wisconsin,
right,
and Minnesota,
right.
And then there are a few more possibilities. President Bush can still win in New Mexico. He's still competing in Iowa. He won Nevada last time around. It can get close at that point, and we're going to have multiple possibilities. But without Ohio, he just has no path.
No Republican has ever been elected without winning in, I'm going to put those back right, without winning in the state of Ohio.
Exactly
Mr.
right.
Bush went up there as recently as yesterday. I think the Democrats called it a panic move. What do you think's going on?
Well, I mean, we're going to have to look and see in those final votes where the vote came out in that state. It was hit hard by job loss, but we know that cultural issues mattered there. We know the war on terror mattered there. Democrats were surprised that President Bush spent 19 days in late September or October away from the state of Ohio, but then he came in very heavy in the final 10 days of the campaign. Maybe that made the difference.
Let me turn to Mark Halpern, our political director, to see, I know you're doing some heavy-duty research at the moment in terms of what you can produce from the various counties. So, first of all, if you wouldn't maybe revisit the Ohio county map which you have there and tell us where you think this may come down.
George talked about Ohio as a puzzle piece on the board for the United States and the Electoral College. We're talking about Ohio now within the state and the counties, doing exactly what both campaigns are doing. Where's the missing vote, and how's it going to come out? Now, there's some counties that have already reported all their vote. One of them is Clark County right here. It's just east of Dayton. You can see it's light blue. That means that Al Gore won it barely in 2000. He won that county by 324 votes. As the campaigns go county by county, they make a decision. They do some analysis. How did we do there compared to last time? President Bush, with 100% in Clark County in 2004, did much better, you'll see. With 100% reporting in Clark County, President Bush winning 51-49. That represents a margin of 1,600 votes. So in a state that President Bush won narrowly last time, he goes in that single county from a deficit of 324 to an advantage of 1,600. And it is that process, county by county in Ohio now, that will decide who the next president is.
Okay, Mark, and I just want to make now an update in terms of the overall electoral vote. We now have Mr. Bush at 246, Mr. Kerry at 195. But you may recall us projecting earlier that Mr. Kerry would win in Maine, but that in Maine they split their electoral votes. And earlier we had apportioned only 3 to Mr. Kerry because one congressional district had not reported in. In Maine now, ABC News now projects it for Mr. Kerry. Well, and he now gets all 4 electoral votes in Maine. I apologize. The machine has confused me just a little. George Stephanopoulos has raised the issue, as has been raised in conversation around here many, many times. 269 to 269. It goes to the House of Representatives because Republicans have a balance in the number of states represented in the House. The president wins the tie.
I think the Republicans control 30 state delegations. Each state delegation has 1 vote. Therefore, the House elects Bush. But here's where the popular vote actually does matter. We've all said for 4 years now, it's not the popular vote that elects presidents, it's the electoral vote. But the popular vote matters because if this were reversed, if, say, Mr. Kerry, at this point, if it ended this way and Mr. Kerry were 3 million popular votes ahead, there would be tremendous pressure, and perhaps some successful pressure, on some states to say, look, we are of Mr. Bush's party, but we're going to vote with the winner of the popular vote. That's why running up the popular vote as a kind of insurance against the politics of the House of Representatives could matter in the event we reach this horrible of horribles, the 269.
Fareed Zakaria, in just a minute or two, we hope to talk to Ken Blackwell, who's the Secretary of State in Ohio, who's got a lot of questions I'm sure he can answer for us about the vote. But your sense of where it goes at this particular moment?
Well, Peter, I just think if you end up at 269, whatever the Constitution says, it will be inevitably a difficult period for the United States because that means Bush will have gotten his first term in office thanks to the Supreme Court and his second term in office thanks to the House of Representatives. Already on the international stage, Bush's first term has always been viewed as somewhat questionable.
That's polite.
I was thinking of a polite word because of the cloudy circumstances of the victory. If the second term is like that, it will produce not just polarization within the United States, but polarization abroad. So for all kinds of reasons, I think it would be nice if it weren't 269.
Fareed, I think there's so much tension in the country, we probably shouldn't divert to a discussion of international relations. However, just one quick answer. If Mr. Bush is re-elected tonight, what will it take for all of those countries who've been after his hide in at least a rhetorical way to change their minds? He'll be seen as much more legitimate, surely, if he wins tonight.
Well, I think nothing will change their minds. But look, Bush will govern probably somewhat differently, but not because of any change of heart. But there are constraints already in place. I mean, we've got 140,000 troops in Iraq. We're not going to go around to other countries. We are using multilateralism in Iran and North Korea because we have no other option. The second term of the Bush administration will probably look somewhat different, not out of conviction, but out of the constraints imposed by the real world.
I have enormous respect for you, but I'm not sure you're absolutely right about that, but we'll come back and discuss it at another time. I want to go to Kate Snow at the moment because we're not completely up to date on some of the Senate races. Kate, we actually have 6 Senate races, correct me if I'm wrong, still outstanding. What can you tell us?
Yeah, that's right. In Alaska, the polls close in about 20 minutes, so we're not going to go there quite yet. But we have 5 other races, and Alaska's tight as well, I should say. But let me talk about South Dakota for a moment. This one is just so watched because it is Tom Daschle, the Democratic leader of the Senate. And look at these numbers. He's fighting for his political career here. If he were to lose, he would be the third leader in history to lose a seat, and it hasn't happened since 1950, Peter. It is not something that happens very often. Usually a leader is a pretty popular guy. He is very popular in South Dakota, but perhaps not popular enough to fend off this challenge from a very popular former House member, John Thune. He's leading right now by 3,700 votes. In Florida, another incredibly tight race. Just to update you on this one, Mel Martinez, the Republican, against Betty Castor, the Democrat, and that's 49% to 49% right now. Martinez leading with 61,000 votes. Here's what's interesting about that. Martinez, we think, was probably helped a little bit by President Bush in the state of Florida, especially in the Panhandle, in the northern areas. He's a Hispanic. He probably did pretty well among Hispanics, you would think, in the southern part of the state. But interesting, Castor also did very well among Hispanic voters in Florida. She got 4 in 10 Hispanic voters. So that's probably why this is such a tight race. In Kentucky, we've been watching this one all night. This is Senator Bunning, the incumbent Republican, 73 years old, serving his first term, the former pitcher in the major leagues and Major League Baseball. Mongiardo is giving him a real run. However, I can tell you, having talked to Mongiardo's people, they are now fairly resigned, Peter, to what may happen here. They think that Bunning is probably going to squeak this one out, squeak by, and retain that seat for the Republicans, which would be very good news for the Republican majority in the Senate.
That's also a very big comeback for Jim Bunning, who was getting just about the worst imaginable publicity several weeks ago.
Yeah, he has had a bad few weeks. He didn't show up for one of his debates, for example. He did another one via satellite from Washington and read a teleprompter reportedly. He made some mistakes in terms of current events, citing things that hadn't really happened in the news and saying he hadn't read a newspaper in 6 weeks. People questioned whether maybe he was having some troubles medically, that perhaps maybe he had some mental problems. None of that was ever substantiated. He made up, or seemed to have made up, something about his wife being beaten up by the opposition. It went on and on. And so, yes, he had some foundering in the polls, and it's showing up there, but it looks like he's going to squeak this one out.
Many thanks, Kate Snow. We're going to go away for just a minute, but when we come back, we're going to talk to one of the most important men in the country at the moment, Ken Blackwell, the Secretary of State in Ohio, the man who knows what actually happens to the votes.
This ABC News special, Vote 2004, will continue in a moment.
Can inspiration replace the typical small car with something that lives a little larger? More space. More function. More sizzle. America's best small car alternative just got a little better. The Chrysler PT Cruiser. Now starting at just $13,995. Chrysler. Inspiration comes standard.
The 3-in-1 blending candle from Glade. The berry picking candle is made up of Glade Fresh Strawberry, Glade Wild Raspberry, and Glade Midnight Berry. 3 complementary scents that blend beautifully from one fragrance to the next. Because 3 scents are better than 1. Glade 3-in-1 blending candles. Now available in Glade 2-in-1 blending candles. SC Johnson, a family company.
So yeah, with our pack and ship service, we can professionally package your shipment for you.
Great.
And I'll tell you what, if you use FedEx Ground, you can ship for up to 35% less than at the UPS store. It's okay, sir. It happens all the time. So, Ground gonna be okay, or?
Yeah, I'm great.
The new FedEx Kinkos. Make it, print it, pack it, ship it. Our office is your office.
Friday, a top 10 list you'll only see on 2020. 10 sex myths we all buy into, like blondes have more fun and size matters, even the 7-year itch. Friday, it's truth or bust. Straight talk about sex myths on 2020.
Vote 2004 continues. Once again, Peter Jennings.
Welcome back to our coverage. We are joined from Ohio tonight by Ken Blackwell, who is the Secretary of State in Ohio and responsible for all of the voting procedures in the state. Mr. Blackwell, first of all, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Peter.
Can you tell me, sir, when you think all of the votes in Ohio will be counted?
Well, I tell you this, Peter. The provisional ballots cannot be counted until the 11th day after the election. So if the regular ballots are counted and the margin of victory for one candidate or the other totals fewer votes or ballots than we have provisional ballots, then it might be 2 weeks before this is resolved.
Do you have any?
If we get to this point.
I'm sorry. Do you have any idea how many people in Ohio today have asked for and been given provisional ballots?
We're in the process of tabulating those numbers as we speak. In 2000, a little over 100,000 provisional ballots were cast. What we know from the 2000 experience is that the provisional ballots are running right now at about 25% to 30% greater than in 2000. So here's what I want to say to people this evening, is that Ohio has a strong bipartisan system for not only running or administering elections, but for counting the ballots. It's a very transparent system. It's a bipartisan system, and everybody should just relax because these ballots are in good hands, and it's in our two-party system.
Let me just point out to people, sir, for no other than just the generic reason, you are a Republican Secretary of State. I don't mean to imply anything by that whatsoever, and you're certainly regarded as an ally of President Bush. But having got that out of the way, have you had any difficulties in the system today? There were a whole question of challenges some time ago. You participated in some of them. Has there been any issue today that you're aware of?
Oh, absolutely not. We had 23 suits that we won prior to the election and prior to the ballots being cast and counted. We won that because we have a system that is tried and true, and we have 50,000 election workers, election officials, and poll workers across the state that are competent, that are hardworking, and that will give us honest results. At the end of the day, what we want is a result where people can have full confidence that the tabulation reflects the legitimate will of the voters. And I think that our system will produce that sort of confidence in the final result, no matter how narrow or no matter how substantial the margin of victory is for one candidate or the other.
Tell me the status of the absentee ballots, if you would, please. I'm sorry, tell me the status of the absentee ballots at the moment.
The absentee ballots are normally the ballots that are counted first. So we are counting the absentee ballots as we speak. It is the provisional ballots and the overseas ballots that will be counted at a later date.
Is the state of Ohio so close at the moment that you think you can or cannot call or project the election with any confidence?
Well, you know, I don't get into the projection business. I leave that to you guys. What I do is make sure that we have a good, solid, honest count, and that's the process that we're getting ready. We're in the middle of now. Look, at the beginning of the day, there were a lot of folks who thought that they were going to witness some sort of havoc, some sort of confusion in the state of Ohio, and the people came through in flying colors. The challenge today has been long lines. Long lines where voters have stood in line for an hour and a half, 2 hours, 2.5 hours. But what we know is that that's a sign of a robust election process and an enlargement of the number of people that are participating. We've had a record number of people participating in today's election in Ohio, some 5.8 million people, and that's a substantial increase. And what's been so interesting, Peter, is that we've had 1 million new registered voters in this state. And so we knew going into this election that 94% of the voters would be veteran voters. They would know where to vote and how to use the machines in their respective precincts. So we concentrated our effort on making sure that our polling places were inviting, not intimidating, for those new first-time voters, and it worked. We asked Ohioans last night, we said, look, let's take control of this election. Let's not put it in the hands of lawyers and judges and the court system. Let's go out and participate and let the results be determined and the outcomes be determined by us. What that took today was civility and an extra measure of patience. And I can tell you, I'm so proud of the Ohio voters because they stood in line in inclement weather and they got it done. And now what we're going to do is give them an honest count. I don't care if it takes me 2 hours, 2 days, or 2 weeks. When we get finished counting, people can have confidence that that vote total represents the authentic will of the people who cast their ballots today.
Mr. Blackwell, thank you very much for coming to see us. It's really important that you showed up here tonight, and we're very grateful to you for coming and explaining what you did. Ken Blackwell, the Secretary of State in Ohio, who says if it takes 2 hours or 2 days or 2 weeks, he wants to be committed to the idea that people in Ohio will give an honest representation of the presidential election of 2004. We'll be back in just a moment.
The 2004 vote. ABC News' coverage will continue in a moment.
Gotcha! Oh, that was a good one. Honey, did you get it?
What would you do on your own private island? Check your mail for the Capital One No Hassle Island giveaway. You could instantly win your own island for one of hundreds of island getaways.
What's in your wallet?
The new Jeep Liberty Renegade. With Command Track 4-wheel drive, a 3.7-liter PowerTech V6 engine, and Jeep Trail-rated capability, it never backs down from a challenge.
Next Tuesday, ABC presents one of the most emotional blues ever. A partner gone but not forgotten returns to help a friend in his darkest hour.
So here I am. In the flesh, so to speak. Something like that.
Jimmy Smits guest stars.
I never got over not having you in the world. I miss you too.
The year's most unforgettable episode.
Tell me what to do, Bobby.
NYPD Blue. Next Tuesday, 10/9 Central, only on ABC.
Welcome back to our election night coverage. Just take a quick look at the map here because you pretty much know, if you've been with us for any length of time at all, what sort of situation we're in at the moment. President Bush, we projected to win Florida a short while ago. The outstanding states are Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, and New Mexico. And out there in the West, Washington, Nevada, and New Mexico, with one exception. Now, ABC News is now going to make a prediction in the state of Washington, 11 electoral votes there. It was an early battleground state, voted for the Democrat in the last 4 presidential elections, and we project that it's going to go for Mr. Kerry this time. So that brings Mr. Kerry up to 207 electoral votes and 246 for Mr. Bush. ABC's George Stephanopoulos and others have already made the point that Mr. Kerry is pretty much going to have to run the table if things do not go his way in Ohio. And you heard the Secretary of State of Ohio say a moment ago, 2 hours, 2 days, 2 weeks. There are these provisional ballots, more than 100,000 of them, George. There were 100,000 and 2,000. He said 30% more than
That's exactly what he said. And Peter, even if Senator Kerry runs the table, if he loses Ohio, the best he can get to is 269, as we've said.
Right.
That throws it into the House of Representatives, where President Bush has the strong advantage. What strikes me about this map right now, Peter, is just how similar it is to the map from 4 years ago.
Let me just try something with folks. Can you put us up full screen here for a moment? These are the electoral votes. I don't want to confuse people at home. This is the electoral vote as of now. Okay, remember the blue states and the red states there. And here it is in 2000. Let's go back again, the live update. Here it was in 2000. In other words, those open states Mr. Gore took in 2000, most of them in 2000, but Mr. Kerry has to do an astonishing amount of work or have something resolved in his favor. And with that in mind, and with the promise that the moment anything happens, we'll be back, I want to turn very quickly to two people who have been very patient with us tonight, because they've been watching the election results come in from the perspective of other parts of the world. The first is John Micklethwaite, who is with us from London, who is the U.S. editor of The Economist and has been for 4 years, and also with him is Yasmin Alibai-Brown, who is a columnist for The Independent. And I apologize for, first of all, keeping you, but Yasmin, just tell me, first of all, on the right, what does this look like to you?
Oh, I have refused to follow the optimism on Kerry. I'm being very partisan. I don't want Bush to win, but I've always thought he was going to take this.
You thought he was going to win the election again?
Yeah.
Yeah. And John Micklethwaite, you joined us at the conventions, wrote this book about America moving its center of gravity to the right. What do you think tonight?
Well, it does look quite good for Bush at the moment, but I think still for Europeans it's going to be a shock, because most of them went to bed with Kerry looking as if he was ahead, but there was a lot of coverage of the exit polls in Europe, and now they're waking up with Bush very close to getting there, although we obviously don't know yet.
You and your colleague have written a book called The Right Nation, which has been widely regarded as understanding the conservative element in America. Is there anything you see tonight that surprises you?
Well, I suppose in our book we said that it would be a very tough election for Bush to win, because he was running with a lousy economy and a lousy war to some extent to defend. And so I suppose if he pulls through, it will show to some extent the resilience of conservative America and the way that it extends not just on the question of the war, but also towards things like all the social issues. I mean, it's quite interesting that most of the gay marriage amendments seem to have been struck down. They seem to have voted Conservative so far.
Well, I very much appreciate being here. I'd like you to hang around if you feel like it, but I don't want to keep you up any later than you really want to stay up, Yasmin. So we're going to have to take another break here. Thank you for your brief comments. If you'd like to stay, I by all means will try to come back to you. Our coverage will continue in just a moment. I think one of the most exciting things about America is you can be freer here to express yourself than almost anywhere else in the world. So many of us are so different from one another. I get up every day thinking that something is going to happen in the world that I didn't know about yesterday, and I have the opportunity to help people understand what it means. This is a really hopeful nation, and I think there's a great beauty in that.
World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Trust is earned.
Rain ending overnight, a low of 39.
On the next Jane Pauley Show, from The Apprentice, Carolyn Kepcher. She reveals the secrets of her success and puts her biggest fan to the test. Get the tips to help get your dream job on the next Jane Pauley Show.
Today at 10 on News Channel 5.
Diamonds, the perfect gift. The Jewelry Factory has quarter-carat diamond studs for $49 and 3-stone pendants and earrings for $99. Prices so low, we guarantee all our jewelry to appraise for double. Buy Factory Direct and Save, the Jewelry Factory in North Randall.
A snowman just isn't a snowman without snow. The News Channel 5 School Closing Network. We're ready. Are you?
Looking for something new to whip up in the kitchen? Watch Food Network Minute, featuring recipe ideas from Wolfgang Puck Fridays and News Channel 5 at noon. Brought to you by the Westside Market and Cleveland Magazine. Check out the Westside Market, where you'll find today's taste and yesterday's tradition.
Now it's 5:38. Thoughts of McGriddles make my stomach quake. For bacon, eggs, and cheese on sweet griddle cakes. Only takes one hand to put them all in my face. McDonald's, I'm loving it. McGriddles, breakfast for you, bedtime snack for me.
If you take away the all-new look, all-new faces, and all-new attitude of the all-new Cash Explosion Double Play, you'll be left with only one thing: money. Lots of money. The all-new Cash Explosion Double Play. Watch it, or better yet, buy a Cash Explosion instant ticket and you could be on it. The all-new Cash Explosion Double Play. Saturday night at 7:30. Right here. Cash Explosion Double Play. New look, same prizes, thousands of them.
Planning to sell your home? Ask a Smythe Kramer Realtor to feature it on the Sunday Showcase of Homes, Sunday mornings at 10:30 on News Channel 5. Meet Kent Clapp, Chairman, President, and CEO of Medical Mutual at the Corporate Club Breakfast at Executive Caterers at Landerhaven, Thursday, November 11th at 7:30 a.m. News Channel 5's Leon Bibb will interview Clapp on the issues faced by insurance companies and those who need insurance. For reservations, call Executive Caterers at Landerhaven. The Corporate Club is sponsored by National City Bank, The Plain Dealer, WTAM Radio, and News Channel 5.
News, weather, and traffic every 10 minutes on Good Morning Cleveland.
Now, live from News Channel 5, this Ohio Vote 2004 update.
And the race is still close. Good morning, everyone. I'm Ted Henry at 1 o'clock in the morning.
And I'm Lee Jordan. Thanks for staying up with us. We'll get you back to ABC and Peter Jennings in just moments. Right now, here is a look at the race for president in Ohio, with 83% of the precincts reporting now. President Bush has 51% of the vote. Senator Kerry has 48% of the vote.
Got about 130,000 people separated between the two candidates there. We're going down to Columbus right now, where Angie Lau is standing by live at the Republican headquarters. And Angie, I hear a lot of cheering back there. Are those people just optimistic, or do they know something that we don't know yet?
Well, Ted, the room is just exploding here with excitement. It's hard to hear you, so I apologize. But the crowd has just erupted with celebration. They are feeling very confident as Bush inches closer to a possible win in this presidential election. But of course, we have to wait to see how Ohio all plays out. We've got, I believe, 83% of the precincts showing, if not more now, and it's 51-48 for Bush. But you have to remember, this is very, very tight still. So as this crowd waits for the final word, so too will we wait to see how Ohio will fall. But as you can see, that these people are very excited about the possibility of another 4 years. Reporting live from Columbus, now back to you.
Okay, Ange, thanks very much. And votes still being counted here in Cuyahoga County. An interesting note that Secretary of State Kenneth Blackwell just told Peter Jennings that between 120 and 130,000 provisional ballots were given out today. Those votes will not be counted until 11 days after the election.
Right. Plus, I think we also have a considerable number of absentee ballots that have to be factored into the mix, so it's still really a little early to call Ohio.
It has been a hopeful night for the Democrats in Columbus. Our Tony Gaskins has been at the Democratic headquarters at the Columbus Marriott. Tony, what is the mood there like at this point?
Well, up until a few seconds ago, the mood was very vibrant, very optimistic, and very in hope that Kerry would take Ohio. There was a collective groan a few seconds ago as the news came in that perhaps Kerry did not have enough or did not have what it takes to take Ohio. And now there is pretty much of a funk around the room because they're not really confident that Ohio will turn out to be in Kerry's camp. So there's still a lot of folks hanging around here, still about, 500 or so people in the room watching intently the news coverage of today's events. But like I say, they got really quiet a few seconds ago on news that perhaps Kerry did not take Ohio. But we'll stick around and see what the night turns out like just in case. Live from Columbus.
Thank you very much. We all voted today. I voted on the east side and the east suburbs of Cleveland today, and now not just News Channel 5, but all the country and all the world is looking to see what those votes are as they're still being counted from the east side of Cuyahoga County, traditionally a Democratic stronghold. We're going next door now to the Board of Elections and Brad Harvey, who's got the latest on the numbers there. And what's the latest that you have that you can tell us about Cuyahoga County and specifically, Brad?
Well, very specifically, let me give you a magic number, 200
200,000. That is the difference in the number of votes that John Kerry needs to win Cuyahoga County by in order to get John Kerry back in this election here in Ohio. That's what both the Republicans and the Democrats are saying are sort of a magic number there, that if John Kerry can have this erase this deficit in Ohio, is going to need to do that primarily from, as you were saying, the eastern portions of Cuyahoga County, which have been primarily leaning Democrat, needless to say, historically here. But it's this 200,000 figure that we're continuing to hear again and again, and it's looking as if that's just about where we are, that Senator John Kerry will take Cuyahoga County by about that margin. Now, keep in mind, there are a number of counties in Ohio that have yet to report as well as a result of various reasons. We've been talking again and again, situation in Oberlin and situations all over the state where there have been very, very long lines, very late ballots coming in. So, but according to some of the Democratic people that have been here, some of the leadership here, the Democratic Party in Cuyahoga County, they're saying that they need to get up over this 200,000 margin number here in Cuyahoga County in order to offset places like Hamilton County, where President Bush is primarily very dominant. So that's what we're looking at here in Cuyahoga County. And again, it is looking like a razor-thin margin. We've been talking about the provisional votes, hearing Secretary of State Blackwell talking about that as well. It may very well come down to that.
Okay, Brad, we're talking about not just Cuyahoga County because of that magic number you keep referring to, but also, much to my surprise, the vote count in Hamilton County, Greater Cincinnati, is amazingly slow. At last report, hovering around 50% only. And that's not going overwhelmingly for President Bush, but it is a considerable margin ahead of Senator Kerry in Hamilton County, so keep your eye on that end of the state as well.
All right, stay with us for complete coverage of the 2004 vote. We'll take you back now to ABC News and Peter Jennings.
To Virginia with its northern Virginia suburbs of Washington, D.C. But remember, Peter, earlier in the evening I made the point that if you carry nothing in the South, plus Oklahoma, Kentucky, West Virginia, that's 173 electoral votes. And if you lose all of those, and Mr. Kerry has now lost them, that means he has to carry 74% of all the remaining electoral votes, and that's very difficult to do. One point about Nevada.
Can I hold you on
Sure.
Nevada for a second? Because I know you want to make an observation, but I want to get Michael Beschloss. And that, of course, is Zell Miller we were looking at on the video there, the Democratic, retiring Democrat, senator from Georgia who made this stinging attack on John Kerry at the Republican convention, is under the skin of every Democrat. But he's the one who said, not only in person, but has said in his book, that he thinks that Democrats, as Linda Douglas said, are out of touch with a way of life in the South that he believes crosses all demographic lines. Michael Beschloss, our historian on this.
Well, you know, Peter, sometimes people forget that until fairly recently, the heart of the Democratic Party was southern states. Even in the 1950s, when Adlai Stevenson was losing huge elections to Dwight Eisenhower, the states he got were in the South because that's where the Democratic Party was. 1964, Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act. He said, I know that by signing this bill, I'm giving the South to the Republican Party forever. But you know, since then, there have been two Democrats who have been able to win elections as president. Jimmy Carter in 1976, Bill Clinton in 92 and 96. And I think it's not by coincidence that these were two people who not only came from the South and were able to carry southern states, but they had grown up among conservatives. They knew how to talk about liberal values in a way that was not offensive to people in the Midwest and the border states and the South. And I think one question that people might well ask is, if John Kerry loses tonight, was that because the Democrats took a risk of nominating someone who is from the Northeast?
Okay,
there hasn't been a Northeastern president elected for 44 years.
Many thanks, Michael. And I want to go to Ken Melman in Washington, but if he'll wait just 1 second, Cokie Roberts, who's the southerner here from Louisiana, gets one comment on the South.
Not only has the South become so Republican at the presidential level, but what we're really seeing tonight is something different at the senatorial level. For Fritz Holling's seat to go Republican, for John Edwards, the candidate on the Democratic ticket in North Carolina's seat to go Republican, and apparently for the seat in Louisiana, it's looking very much like it, for the first time ever, will go Republican. I mean, we're talking about a much more Republican South than we've ever seen before.
Many thanks, Cokie. And the rest of you, George, will come back to you on Nevada in just a minute, but I want to talk first to Ken Melman with the Bush campaign. campaign, who's joined us again from Washington tonight. I'd like to say that you have a big smile on your face, but you always have that smile, and so
it's bigger right now.
So, so what's on your mind about Ohio? What's seriously on your mind about Ohio?
I think we're going to win Ohio. I think we won it today. The numbers are coming in. Another of the networks, Fox News, called Ohio for the president. I believe others will follow suit. I think that if you look at the numbers, what you're seeing is this. Cuyahoga County, which is Cleveland, the Democrats, often the best performing part of the state for them. We actually did better this time than we did in 2000 when we won the state. And we're doing incredibly well in the rural parts of the state. And there still are some outstanding votes in the southwest part of the state where Republicans always do well. So we feel great about where we stand in Ohio and are very appreciative of the fact that the president's won that state.
And as you look on, I just point out again, we have not projected Ohio for the state, though as you point out, another, the Fox network has. Looking out to Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, New Mexico, and Nevada. You want to make some equally confident projections there?
Well, I do think we're going to win Nevada. I think if you look at the numbers, the Democrats had to do very well in Clark County, which is Las Vegas, and they did not do as well as they needed to. In terms of the other states, I think they're all very close. I think that Wisconsin's going to be very close, Iowa's going to be very close, New Mexico very close. All three will come right down to the wire. Michigan and Minnesota are obviously harder for us to win, but we feel great about where we are. Winning Ohio, I believe, and winning Nevada wins 4 more years for George W. Bush, and I think that's a great thing for the country.
Thanks, Ken, very much. The votes are all in. He's one of the smartest men in politics. You have to take what he says very, very seriously. One comment about Nevada from George Will.
Well, it was last Friday that Ken Melman told me, inferring from who was voting and the absentees and all these other mysteries they understand, inferring that the Democrats were winning in Clark County but radically underperforming, so we thought they were going to get it. It's worth remembering as a historical fact, Peter, that the first Republican president, Lincoln, rushed Nevada into the Union from territorial status to statehood status, even though it only had about 1/5 of the population required, because he thought he might need the 3 electoral votes in 1864, or that it might go to the House and he'd really need it.
I remember the incident. Many thanks, George, very much. On Nevada and Ohio, our coverage will continue in just a moment.
Vote 2004, Election Night. Brought to you by Chrysler. Inspiration comes standard. This ABC News special will continue in a moment.
Get ready for a whole new kind of Dodge. Introducing the all-new Magnum SXT with a 3.5-liter high-output engine and all-speed traction control. Open it up and find a tri-fold cargo floor, unique access liftgate, even a powerful Boston acoustic sound system. Dodge Magnum SXT, a whole different ride. Velocity meets versatility. The all-new Magnum starting at $22,495, only at your Dodge dealer.
Oh, Capital One.
Check your mail for the Capital One No Hassle Island giveaway. Look inside and see if you've instantly won your own private island or one of hundreds of island getaways.
What's in your wallet?
We'd like to show you our underwear. Not that you can see it. Serenity Discreet for bladder control with a close-fit design and Odosorb Plus to help prevent odors. Serenity Discreet. For store locations or a free sample, call this number. Introducing the new look of Serenity Bladder Control with a fresh white top sheet to help keep you dry, high-rising soft sides, and now with Odosorb Plus to help prevent odors. Designed to leave you feeling fresh as a, well, you know.
You want flat and unobstructed, a little consistency? Try bowling.
Tiger, VJ, and Ernie head the field as the top 30 in the game go at it. The Tour Championship, this weekend on ABC. This ABC News special, Vote 2004, continues. Once again, Peter Jennings.
Welcome back to our coverage. We've been, obviously, all of us sitting around here talking about Ohio, and as Corky Roberts and I were just mentioning, and you found it out in Ohio during the campaign, this is all about economics versus the moral issues, about the character issues. In Cincinnati, for example, which was the base for this very powerful and successful campaign in favor of an amendment to ban gay marriage in the state. The head of that movement told me about 2 weeks ago that they had enlisted in their campaign about 1,000 evangelical churches. And if you have successfully engaged 1,000 churches and their membership in various parts of the state, you have pulled in a hugely powerful force in terms of driving the moral character notions of the election. And if it is true that in Cuyahoga County up in the northeast, around Cleveland, George Stephanopoulos, that the Democrats have not produced the turnout. Ken Millman says they haven't produced the turnout they'd anticipated.
That's where they had to get it, Peter. That's right. They had to get it across the Northeast, from Cleveland across into Youngstown, the places that have the highest proportion of African American votes and also have been hardest hit by the loss of manufacturing jobs over the last 4 years, Youngstown especially in that steel belt. And they had to produce in the big city of Columbus, in the city of Dayton, in the city of Toledo, because they would lose the suburbs and the rural areas.
Let's go to our political director, Mark Halpman, to see what else you can contribute on the state of Ohio, or for that matter, any other issue.
Well, Peter, the exit poll matches up what you found when you went to Cincinnati. It's nice when that works out, that the reporting matches up with what we found as we talked to voters. In Ohio today, supporters of, before I get to the gay marriage ban, let me just tell you,
Stay with that, because that's the graphic that's up.
Okay. In gay marriage ban on the ballot, it passed by a decisive margin. They asked Ohio voters if they supported banning gay marriage, and that passed decisively. And of the people who voted for the gay marriage ban, the president won 66% to 34% for Senator Kerry. Pretty decisive. Also, that issue was, we thought, would be a key motivator for a key group, that strong vote for the president among white Protestant churchgoers. They voted overwhelmingly for the president, a key group, not just in Ohio, but in almost all the battleground states. That group voted 70% for the president, 30% for Mr. Kerry. They voted in about the same proportions as they did 4 years ago. And then one other number from Ohio, Peter. Kerry supporters, their top issue, 42% said it was the economy. For Bush supporters, moral values was cited by 38%. And obviously, a lot of those voters, I'm sure, were concerned with that gay marriage ban.
So 40 to 38% on the economy vis-a-vis the so-called moral character issues.
Again, for Kerry supporters, the top issue, for almost half of them, 42%, was the economy. For Bush voters, it was moral values, 38% was their top issue.
Okay, many thanks, Mark. I know that Kate Snow has got a lot of exit polling information as well, Kate, but I'm not sure your unit is ready. So you tell me, you want to do some exit polls, or do you want us to come back to you in a moment?
Which races?
Well, you've got a whole mess of them over there, pretty much your call.
Well, we could tell you about some of the exit polls in the Senate races, or I could tell you about governors, which we haven't talked about at all.
Yeah, we have never touched on governors. Promising people will come back. If anything happens in the battleground state, let's talk about governors.
All right, let's do governors. There are 11 races tonight. And there's one important one that I think we should call, that we have been talking about, and that's Mitch Daniels. He's the former director of the Office of Management and Budget under Bush. He's a Republican, and he was trying to unseat Joseph Kernan, the current governor of Indiana, the Democrat, and he has done so. We can project that Mitch Daniels has won that race. So that's a switch over to the Republican column. Republicans currently do hold the majority of governorships in the country, and they're adding to that with Mitch Daniels. Utah, we can project that Jon Huntsman will become the next governor of Utah. That was a Republican seat. It was a retiring situation. Olene Walker retired, and Jon Huntsman will take over. In North Dakota, John Hoeven is the projected winner there. The current governor will retain that. In Delaware, Ruth Ann Minner, we project, will keep her seat as the governor. She'll go into her second term. She's the first female governor, by the way, of Delaware. In North Carolina, Michael Easley will go into his second term now, a Democrat. In West Virginia, the projected winner, another Democrat, Joe Manchin. It was Bob Wise. He's retired, and now Joe Manchin will take that seat. In Vermont, Governor Jim Douglas retains his governorship there. He's had a career in Vermont politics. In Missouri, this is still one that's open, Peter. We have not called this one yet. It's Claire McCaskill, the Democrat, taking on Matt Blunt, the Republican. It's open because Claire McCaskill actually booted out the Bob Holden, the governor of Missouri, in the primary, which is unusual. She beat him in the primary, so she's now running against Blunt. And we're waiting for more information about this one, but this could be one where it could potentially change over if Blunt were to win. Then it becomes a Republican governorship. A couple of others tight races just to quickly tell you about New Hampshire. Craig Benson, the governor there, just a first-term governor, and he's been having some trouble in this race. We talked to a Republican observer up in New Hampshire who said that this is one of the worst-run campaigns in the history of the state of New Hampshire by the GOP. So Benson's having a big fight. And finally in Montana, actually we've got two more. Montana, Brian Schweitzer appears to be doing pretty well there, but we can't call it quite yet. Not enough information there. And in Washington State, where Gary Locke has retired, Christine Gregoire may succeed in taking his place as a Democrat.
Okay, many thanks, Kate. Taking us a while to get to the governors, for which I apologize, but it does speak, I think, to the importance of the presidential race. There's still some outstanding Senate races, but the big one is in the presidential race. What's going to happen in Ohio, New Mexico, Nevada, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan also yet to be decided in such a way that we feel confident, fully confident, projecting them. Our coverage will continue in just a moment.
This ABC News special, Vote 2004, will continue in a moment.
I'm ready to fight my cancer.
I'm ready to begin chemotherapy.
I really am ready because I'm going to take Neulasta right from the start to help protect me from infection.
Chemotherapy can reduce your white blood cell count and increase your risk of infection, which could put your treatment on hold. But Neulasta is a white blood cell booster that can help restore your white blood cell count to reduce your risk of infection. And with a sufficient white blood cell count, your doctor may have a better chance of giving you your chemo on schedule, which doctors agree is the first step to success. Neulasta is for most cancer patients receiving strong chemotherapy. In rare cases, splenic rupture or serious allergic reactions have been reported. Report abdominal or shoulder pain or any allergic reaction to your doctor immediately. The most common side effect of this injection is mild to moderate bone pain.
I'm ready to start.
I'm ready to fight.
I'm ready, thanks to Neulasta.
Ask your doctor about Neulasta and how you can be ready for chemotherapy.
I'll get the seats, you get the stroller.
Introducing the only minivan with 2 rows of fold-and floor seats. The all-new 2005 Grand Caravan with exclusive stow-and-go seating and storage.
Honey, you coming?
The TV Guide is calling ABC's Lost TV's most addictive new drama. For the stranded survivors on this mysterious island,
We know your help.
the dangers are real.
Where is he? Is he alive?
But for one young man to survive,
You're not yourself, right?
You don't know me.
he must first overcome his obsession
Can't stop feeling like this.
Struggle is nature's way of strengthening.
and conquer the demons within.
I want my drugs back.
Dominic Monaghan stars in an all-new Lost. Wednesday, 8/7 Central, only on ABC.
This ABC News special, Vote 2004, continues. Once again, Peter Jennings.
I keep being reminded how the other real world intrudes on us. ABC's Martha Raddatz, who is our national security correspondent, has been at the Pentagon watching this all night and has not participated in the discussion, but she reminds us about the war, the Iraqi explosion that they heard a short while ago somewhere in Baghdad may have been a car bomb. Yeah, if I can have her, I'd like very much to talk. Hey, Martha, hi.
I'm here.
Thank you for spending such a long night with us, but I know you're accustomed to this in terms of the war. These little messages I get that the campaign against Fallujah is not begun, of course, but a lot of bombing tonight, and now you send us a message about what you call a vehicle-borne
Improvised explosive device, yes, the VBIED, which is essentially a car bomb. There was apparently a car bomb at the entrance to the airport, to Baghdad International Airport, at the civilian entrance to the airport. I'm told that as far as car bombs go, it did not cause a great deal of damage, but we don't know the casualty figures yet. As you know, Peter, that has been one of the major problems in Iraq over the last month or so, these car bombs, and you're seeing more and more of them over there.
I'm reminded how much and how intensely in the last few weeks the candidates argued about the explosives that were missing in Iraq. As you've been on your email, as any of you are, to commanders and soldiers and Marines in Iraq tonight, what are they saying about this election?
Oh, I think there's a great difference of opinion over there. As you know, I was over there, I just got back about a week ago or so, and I think I was surprised at how many soldiers came up to me and said, you know, I'm voting for John Kerry because people don't really understand how bad it is over here. But the next day, someone would come up and say, you know, I'm voting for George Bush because I didn't like what John Kerry said about this being the wrong war at the wrong time. Comments like that strike very deep with soldiers in the field. But I would also add, Peter, that I didn't think a lot of people were paying a great deal of attention. They've got a lot more important things on their hands over there. And I would sit in the mess halls and people wouldn't really be watching television. There's certainly no talk about the debates. And I was over there during the period when there were several debates.
Right.
They just weren't talking about it.
One of the things I don't know that you absolutely know the answer to, maybe the Pentagon does, is to how many soldiers and Marines in the theater have actually participated in the election. Do we have any idea?
I'm not sure about that. I don't have any figures on that yet, and I think you might still see some sort of balloting coming through, some sort of voting from the field. Sometimes that takes a lot longer than you think.
It's interesting when I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay.
No, I was going to say it's interesting. It's about several hours from now when you and I are getting up to come to work. You're always up, I notice, looking at your email before I am, that we begin to see this activity from Iraq on a daily basis about the increasing level of violence in the country. And you're seeing it again tonight, aren't you?
Yes, and I think particularly, and you pointed out Fallujah, I think Fallujah is really at the boiling point as far as U.S. commanders are concerned, and I think you'll probably see some sort of action as soon as the Iraqi government gives the go-ahead. When I was there, they were certainly starting these airstrikes, more intensified airstrikes, and there was some ground action when I was there as well, but there is a lot of talk, and you've heard some very strong statements from commanders over there saying the status quo cannot stand. Elections have to go forward in this area in Fallujah in order for them to be free and fair elections across the country. Those elections, as you know, are scheduled for January. So I think you're probably on the verge of some sort of action in Fallujah. Certainly don't know any date for that, but they have been very out front about saying this is going to happen.
Well, I hate like heck to keep you this late at night, but it's certainly terrific having you. Nobody knows this story better than you do. We're going to come back in just a moment after having talked to Martha Raddatz to talk to the two campaigns, our correspondents with the campaigns, right after this.
Vote 2004, Election Night, will continue in a moment.
I think one of the most exciting things about America is you can be freer here to express yourself than almost anywhere else in the world. And so many of us are so different from one another. I get up every day thinking that something is going to happen in the world that I didn't know about yesterday, and I have the opportunity to help people understand what it means. This is a really hopeful nation, and I think there's a great beauty in that.
World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Trust is earned.
Now, live from News Channel 5, this Ohio Vote 2004 update.
Good morning, everyone. Ted Henry with Lee Jordan. It's coming up at 1:30 in the morning. Still too early to call for the state of Ohio from our perspective, although two networks have already called Ohio going in President Bush's camp tonight.
That is right. However, it could be that the outcome of the state might ultimately come down to the provisional ballots, and we'll have more on that in a moment. Right now, looking at 89% of the precincts reporting, President Bush has 51% of the vote, and Senator Kerry has 48% of the vote.
And we're going to go down to Angie Lau right now at the Republican headquarters in Columbus, where there was a lot of hooting and hollering, Angie, about 30 minutes ago when we were last with you. Yeah. Those people think the election's in doubt, or do they think it's all sewn up by now?
Well, every time one of those networks called it for Ohio in the Bush column, this crowd just went crazy, just like they're doing behind me right now. They've been dancing here, balloons have dropped, they've been hugging, kissing, going on, a lot of hooping and hollering. But in Ohio, with 89% of the precincts reporting, the numbers are still very close, and that is why ABC News is not yet calling it for Bush for Ohio. About 110,000 votes separate Bush and Kerry. Now remember, there were 130,000 provisional ballots handed out today. Now those envelopes will not be opened until November 13th. Those provisional ballots still have to be counted, and so if it's this close, well, we'll just have to wait and see. But certainly for these people behind me, they feel that the momentum has been with them all night, and they feel that they're going to win tonight, and they feel confident in that. But of course, it's still too close to call, at least for us. Reporting live from Columbus, Angie Lau, News Channel 5.
Angie, you know, Lee, a lot of people are seeing somewhat of a nightmare scenario here because it does indeed seem to be coming down to the Buckeye State. We do have 110,000 votes separating. And if the country has to wait until November 13th for the provisional ballots to be counted, we'll be going through something like 4 years ago, but only worse.
Looking at 130,000 or more provisional ballots that were filled out today. Right now we're going to go to the Democratic headquarters at the Columbus Marriott. Tony Gaskins has been there throughout the evening. And Tony, I'm expecting that things are a little bit quieter there.
You're right. It's a very subdued mood here at the Democratic headquarters in downtown Columbus, Lee. It's quite a change from the way it was just about a half an hour ago when they thought Kerry was heading to a victory in Ohio. But although two networks, as you say, are calling it for Bush, these folks here who remain are not about to call it for Bush right now. They're holding out as much hope as they can that somehow Kerry can pull this off and take Ohio. There are not as many people as there were here half an hour ago, but there are still people here, and they're holding out hope in those provisional ballots. They think they can make up the ground that they lost with those provisional ballots. So we'll have to wait and see, and a lot of people here are doing just that, waiting and seeing. Reporting live from Columbus, Tony Gaskins, News Channel 5.
Okay, Tony, thanks very much. And again, we are pointing out that it will be 11 days before those provisional ballots are accounted for, which more than cover the number of votes right now separating the two candidates in
We have 110,000 separating the two candidates. We're going over to Brad Harvey right now at the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections. And Brad, a couple of considerations to factor in here. You got the outstanding votes on the east side of Cleveland, Cuyahoga County, predominantly Democratic, still to be factored in. Plus, as I pointed out before, a considerable number of votes down south in Cincinnati, Hamilton County. So we really don't even know the true figure yet. That's outside of the consideration of the provisional ballots.
Absolutely. And let me bring you up to date a little. All of the votes, almost minus one precinct, all of the votes in Cuyahoga County have now been counted. As a matter of fact, we are looking at a 99.56, I believe it is, percent of the vote counted here. We were talking about this magic number of 200,000, the amount that, according to the Democratic Party leaders, they felt that John Kerry needed to carry Cuyahoga County by in order to be in this race to eliminate some of the deficit that he's seen in other parts of the state to the president. Well, here are the almost final figures once again. John Kerry winning Cuyahoga County by a margin of 217,274 votes. Now, here's the other important thing. We also talked to Bob Bennett, who's on the elections board here. He's a major GOP figure. He says that none of that really makes any difference because even with those figures, even discounting the provisional ballots that are about 24,000 provisional ballots, he believes that President Bush will carry Ohio even by 100,000 votes, even with this 217,000 figure that we're seeing surplus for John Kerry here in Cuyahoga County. So this is the point at which everybody simply sharpens their pencils and begins to think very hard about their math skills, I think, from high school to try to determine exactly what this election will turn out to be. Cuyahoga County, obviously, a very important piece of the puzzle. Hamilton County continuing to be an important piece of the puzzle. And one other thing, there are some other votes that we really haven't talked about because they only number in the few hundreds, but if it continues to be as close as everybody says it is, they could factor in somewhat as well. And these are the overseas ballots that will not be counted, obviously, for 10 days as well. So these will be set aside. There are several hundred of those. These are military ballots from overseas. So, boy, I tell you, it is coming down to it, and here we are standing in the middle of all of it, guys.
You were talking about the provisional ballots, Brad. If we can go back to you for just a second here in Cuyahoga County, we were throwing around the figure of 100, maybe 125,000 provisional ballots statewide. Did you say 24,000 in Cuyahoga County?
24,000 is the figure that we're getting here for Cuyahoga County, so that obviously is something that'll be on the table, be looking at as well. But again, according just the Republican spin on this from one of the members of the Board of Elections here, saying that he did not feel that those would actually be significant because he felt the margin would be comfortable enough for the president to be able to pull out Ohio, regardless of what happens now in Cuyahoga County.
Well, you're right using the word spin, because there's a Democratic spin on it too, that the provisional ballots could be way more than 125,000. Maybe up to and including 200,000.
Remains to be seen, a story that will be scrutinized intensely by both sides. We'll take you back to Peter Jennings now on ABC News.
When John Kerry speaks about Iraq, 30 to 40% of his party agrees with him, 30 to 40% disagrees. Whereas for Bush, it is a uniting feature. So the very things that makes it easy for John Kerry to win in New York and California and win big make it difficult for him to win Ohio, as we're seeing right now.
Okay, many thanks, Freed. I want to bring in, if I may now, from Los Angeles, one of the guests who's had to sort of sit around for much of the night, waiting for just such a moment as I think we've arrived at. This is Stuart Taylor, who is the national columnist for the National Journal. And Stuart, if I may remind you of something you wrote in a recent column with which I suspect you're very familiar. American politics has never been and never will be a thing of beauty. Where are we at tonight, do you think?
Well, I think we're down to Mr. Kerry hanging on by his fingernails to the hope that he can win Ohio, as we've heard, by somehow sweeping a huge percentage of the large number of provisional ballots cast by people who had some question about their registration. And I think we've heard from your other correspondents reason to doubt that he can make up that deficit. I'm not sure we have all the relevant numbers. I'm not sure if we know, for example, what the historical pattern has been on Democrats and Republicans winning provisional ballots. If, though, the Democrats decide, if the Kerry campaign decides after doing whatever math they need to do, that they've got at least an outside shot at winning Ohio with provisional ballots, then we may see more lawsuits. There are a lot of legal issues that have disputed about how to count provisional ballots. One is, what if the voter goes to the wrong precinct and casts a provisional ballot? Must it be counted? Kenneth Blackwell, the Ohio Secretary of State, has said no. His decision was upheld by a federal appeals court about 8 days ago.
Right.
I'm not sure whether it's still possible to appeal that to the Supreme Court.
Let me finish your statement in all fairness the way you actually wrote it the other day. American politics has never been and never will be a thing of beauty unless and until genetic engineers purge selfishness, dishonesty, tribalism, and irrationality from human nature. It's a great phrase. As you look at the election...
And they're working on that, I'm glad to say.
As you look at the election tonight, how do you think it's by and large going? I don't mean in terms of partisan terms, in terms of the process with which you've been so concerned.
The process, one concern that I think a lot of people had, and I had, which is that we would be that there would be a flurry of lawsuits in a lot of battleground states that would tie up everything in litigation and would see Bush versus Gore, maybe something worse. That does not appear to have been happening. I think the reason is a lot of the issues were resolved. There was a great deal of litigation before the election, and a lot of the issues were resolved, so that by the time the election was held, there wasn't anything much to fight over. The other reason, I think, is none of the battleground states so far, with the possible exception of Ohio, seem to have had a close enough balance between the two presidential candidates so that there could be litigation could tip the outcome. I think a lot of people who are concerned about the process will heave a sigh of relief if at the end of the day we have a fairly clear winner, if not tonight, maybe tomorrow, and it isn't tied up in a long, bitter, polarizing process of lawsuits.
As you look at the map tonight, a map which I know you're not altogether happy has been done just in reds and blues, do you think you're looking at a partisan nation which will have some difficulty recovering from the angst of its partisanship?
Yes and no. There's been some interesting research, including some by a political scientist, Morris Fiorino, Stanford, that the nation itself is really not very polarized. That Americans are by and large as tolerant and as willing to get along with one another, in some ways more tolerant than they were 20 or 30 years ago. That it's the political class, very broadly defined, that's polarized. The politicians, the interest groups, the people who passionately care about politics, the professors, perhaps some of the journalists, and that polarization makes it look as though the entire country is polarized. For example, the example that comes to mind is, let's imagine that the presidential nominees this year had been John McCain and Joe Lieberman, or John McCain and John Kerry, for that matter. I think it would have been a much less polarizing election. I'm not saying those would have been better nominees. That's not the point. The point is, I think it is the particularly President Bush who's attracted such passionate support and such passionate opposition that tends to make the electorate look more polarized than it really is.
I got a couple more questions I'd like to ask you, so please stay with us if you would. Our coverage will continue in just a moment. That's Stuart Taylor from the National Journal, one of our guests tonight. We'll be back.
Vote 2004, Election Night, will continue in just a moment.
The all-new Jeep Grand Cherokee. With QuadraDrive 2, our most advanced four-wheel drive system ever, a 5.7-liter Hemi V8, and our new electronic stability program. The off-road legend continues on-road.
A funny thing happens when your body doesn't sleep at night. Your mind zones out during the day. It's like going through life on autopilot, out of sync with the world around you. To help you sleep, there's Ambien, the #1 prescribed sleep aid in America. Ambien helps you fall asleep fast and stay asleep longer, so you wake up refreshed, not groggy. Until you know how Ambien will affect you, you shouldn't drive or operate machinery. Side effects may include drowsiness, dizziness, and diarrhea. You shouldn't take it with alcohol. All people taking sleep medicines have some risk of becoming dependent on the medicine. Prescription sleep aids are most often taken for 7 to 10 days as needed, or longer as advised by your doctor. Memory problems can usually be avoided by taking Ambien only when you can devote 7 to 8 hours to sleep. Talk to your doctor about Ambien. Ambien works like a dream.
Thursday, a stunning hour only Diane Sawyer could bring you.
I go behind bars, inside the world of maximum security. Women in prison, fear, sex, secret codes, tears.
Diane Sawyer's unforgettable journey on Primetime Thursday.
ABC News Election Night 2004 continues. Once again, Peter Jennings.
Well, we don't know absolutely where this is going at the moment, and we're pressing the Kerry campaign, we're pressing the Bush campaign on a variety of issues, but take a look at our map and you can see precisely where we are at the moment. Ohio, the Kerry people have no apparent interest, nor should we even force them to have an apparent interest in conceding in Ohio, but ABC News is not in a position to confidently project in Ohio with the number of provisional ballots in question and not the entire state reported or counted. And I guess you all know, who've paid any attention to the debate and the justified criticism of the media, particularly the networks and the cables after 2000, that we are not in a great hurry to risk saying something about which we are not certain. Yes, George.
But Peter, President Bush just passed an important milestone in just the last couple of minutes.
Look at the popular vote up there on the screen. President Bush has now got 51% of the popular vote, 50,497,000, now just to 539,064 votes. Last time around in 2000, President Bush won 50,456,000 votes. So he's already topped the total from last time. And secondly, he is still above that all-important 50%. If President Bush holds on to that, he will be the first president since his father to break 50%.
And much more importantly, I suspect from his point of view, however competitive he may or may not be with his father, if he holds on and he is the president again, he will, if he wins the popular vote, be able to say, I won both.
Fair and square, and I won both of them. Absolutely right.
Okay, I want to go back to Stuart Taylor from the National Journal, who's been hanging around for quite a long time. Stuart, we're very grateful for you hanging around, but I want you to make the one point again, which I feel I share with you, which is to say that the country is never quite as divided on a whole mess of issues as we in the media say it is.
Yes, and not everyone in the media. There's been a whole debate about this in the media and elsewhere this year. But I think the deepest research I've seen, public surveys of public opinions on issues like abortion, for example, show that the public there's a fairly broad spectrum of people in the public who are kind of ambivalent. They want abortion to be legal some of the time. They don't want it to be legal all of the time.
Gun control.
They're not quite sure. And whereas the political forces are arrayed into passionately pro-abortion rights groups that want even very late-term abortions to be virtually an option at any time, and passionately anti-abortion groups who want to ban it entirely.
There's been some discussion about which side might take defeat in this election better. I've heard it argued by at least one of my colleagues here that if the Republicans had lost tonight, they would have taken defeat with a greater grace than if the Democrats lose again. What do you think?
Well, I think there's two cross-cutting things. One, the Democratic bitterness against President Bush is very powerful and will not go away. However, the fact that if he wins, and if he wins a popular vote victory, that will perhaps erase one of the great complaints Democrats have about President Bush, which is that, of course, he became president after losing the popular vote in the 2000 election and after a very disputed electoral count in Florida and all that. If he wins a narrow but undisputed victory here, it will no longer be possible to question the legitimacy of his holding office. People still may not like what he does.
Many thanks, Stuart. Please don't leave unless you have to. Stuart Taylor from the National Journal with us this evening. I want to check in on the campaigns at the moment. The Bush campaign staff has apparently moved from its headquarters over to the Reagan building, where we've had that sort of large shot earlier this evening of where they intend to celebrate if they ultimately do celebrate. ABC's Terry Moran is at his White House post. Terry, what's going on?
Well, Peter, the senior staff here, the president's closest aides, his family, they are all gathered in the West Wing. They brought some photographers up a little while ago in a very celebratory mood here. They think they've got this thing won. They are very confident in that. Vice President Cheney arrived a little while ago. They're working on the speech right now. Obviously, there are votes yet to be counted in Ohio and elsewhere, but I must say there is a unanimity of opinion in the Bush campaign. They think they've got this won, and one of the things that they think did it for them was that vast Amway-style network of church members, neighbors who called each other. It wasn't organized in a professional way, but a volunteer way, and it was organized over the course of 4 years, and that, they believe, has come through for them tonight.
Terry, thanks very much. Just before I go to Dean Reynolds on the Kerry campaign, this brings up the question of the get the vote out effort. And as we've said several times in the past few weeks, the Democrats farmed theirs out to some extent to professional organizations formed for this very purpose, and the Republicans, so to speak, kept it in the family. What does this tell you?
Well, I mean, what the Democrats will say that they also had a lot of volunteers as well. In fact, they point out that they tripled the number of volunteers nationwide. But what the Republicans were doing is making a virtue out of necessity. They have not had the outside allies, the foot soldiers like the Democrats have had in the past, mostly organized labor, union members. So they tried to build a new network, going to the churches, as we've talked about several times this evening. And Karl Rove invested a lot of time and attention and money into this effort over the last 4 years. They know that in past campaigns they were beaten on the ground, and they were determined not to let it happen this time.
ABC's Dean Reynolds, who covers the Kerry campaign. Dean, in Boston?
Well, Peter, you know, when one side in a very close election has to keep asserting its confidence, it tells you something about the level of its confidence. And frankly, the Kerry campaign, and it's now raining, drizzling here, which further dampens the mood, has been trying to buck itself up for the last, I'd say, about 6 hours. It was only about 12 hours ago that they were feeling really good, and earlier this morning when we arrived in Massachusetts, I couldn't find any Kerry campaign folks who didn't think they were going to win. They must be well and truly shocked tonight, especially about the loss of Ohio. If there was one state in the whole country where they thought they could make the economic arguments stick, it would be Ohio, which has lost more than 200,000 jobs during George Bush's presidency.
Let me ask you a question which I'm sure you've certainly twigged me there. Do you believe that the Kerry campaign is conceding Ohio? Because we've not, hate to put you in an embarrassing position here, we've not projected Ohio.
No, but everybody else has, and I think they can watch television as well as everybody else. Their claim about these provisional ballots, it's going to be a long stretch, and it has the whiff of legal action, frankly, and I don't know that there's a lot of stomach for that throughout the entire campaign.
Okay, thanks very much, Dean Reynolds with the Kerry campaign. When we come back, we will talk to an attorney in Washington, Stanley Brand, who knows a lot about challenging elections. If it comes to that, we'll see what his opinion is. Hope you'll stay with us.
ABC News coverage of Vote 2004 will continue in a moment.
Who needs an erectile dysfunction treatment that can work up to 36 hours? Couples who don't want to put their lovemaking on a schedule. Couples who just like to let it happen. 36-hour Cialis is for couples who like to choose the moment that's right for them. Because Cialis is the only ED treatment proven to both go to work fast and work up to 36 hours. Cialis is only for men healthy enough for sexual activity. Do not take Cialis if you take nitrates for chest pain, or certain alpha blockers for prostate problems, or high blood pressure, as this may cause an unsafe drop in blood pressure. Don't drink alcohol in excess with Cialis. Side effects may include headache, upset stomach, delayed backache, or muscle ache. Erections lasting longer than 4 hours, though rare, require immediate medical help. Discuss your health status with your doctor and ask if Cialis is right for you. Then ask your partner what she has in mind. 36-hour Cialis. When the moment is right, will you be ready?
Whoa.
The all-new Dodge Dakota.
Nice, yeah.
With the only V8 in its class.
This is gonna look great in our bedroom. You are such an
And the most overall interior room.
wonderful man.
Vote 2004 continues. Once again from election headquarters in New York, Peter Jennings.
Now, live from News Channel 5, this Ohio Vote 2004 update.
Fooled you, didn't we? Once again from downtown Cleveland at the corner of 30th and Euclid, where last night at this time they were practicing to make sure all the election went well across the street at the First Methodist Church. That would be on the southeast corner of 30th and Euclid. We're on the northeast corner of 30th
Then
and
the
Euclid.
Board of Elections.
And on the northwest corner is where all the activity is. In fact, the focus of the media in the country is looking at that place right now.
And we think could continue to be looking at that place for many days to come.
Maybe 11.
Let's take a look at the numbers right now. 92% of the precincts reporting. President Bush, 51% of the vote. And Senator Kerry, John Kerry, with 49% of the vote. Now, the story that is emerging at this hour are the provisional ballots that have been passed out today, their number being anywhere from 130,000 to perhaps many more. Those we will not know the result of for 10 more days?
Right, till November 11th or 12th, November 11th, 13th, I'm sorry, it's November 13th, and if you do the math there roughly with those numbers you're looking at, Lee, we have about 105,000 votes separating President Bush from Senator Kerry right now, so you got the provisional ballots. You also have the historical fact that 4 years ago, 90% of the provisional ballots that were counted, in fact, were valid. So the big question is how they fall between the two candidates. Plus, you must also factor in, not the absentees, they've already been counted, but the votes being cast by the soldiers overseas, and that's in the thousands as well. So we could have very well the presidency decided by the state of Ohio, by the people here of northeastern Ohio, and by our soldiers overseas.
And not tonight.
Not tonight.
Not tonight.
It might not be tomorrow night or the next night either.
Well, stay with ABC News, of course, for continuing coverage through the early morning hours. And Good Morning Cleveland will be on board here very shortly.
And we'll see you later today. Thank you for joining us, and good night.
Good morning.
When the issues were Iraq, terrorism, the economy, over and over and over again, independent voters are saying that the issue that matters most to them, moral values.
Interesting.
And, and that is trumping those other three.
Okay, we'll see how that plays in Ohio specifically, which is I thought we were focused on. Independent voters choosing the issues of morality over the others. We will come back. Oh, we have 1 more minute. All right, let's everybody slow down for a second. Hamilton County, it's sort of Hamilton County versus Cuyahoga County.
Cincinnati
up there
versus Cleveland.
Cincinnati
is
versus Cleveland. And this brings us back, of course, to the whole question of Get Out the Vote campaign. Earlier in the day, the Democrats were positively ebullient about their Get Out the Vote efforts.
Sure were. And what might have happened, and this is from reading the tea leaves and the early returns that we've seen, is that the Democrats got their vote out, but sure enough, the Republican Party and that Amway operation that Terry Moran was talking about just a few minutes ago got its vote out as well, and both sides lifted up. So far from what we've seen, the Democrats did quite well in Cuyahoga County, 66% of the vote so far for Senator Kerry.
Your experience as a political operative in a much, much former life, in terms if somebody's got a good Get Out the Vote operation that is in full steam, can you catch up in the middle of the afternoon or the early evening?
Oh, sure, depending on which precincts are getting counted. There's no question about it. And one thing you saw happening today on both sides, Peter, it was fascinating. Both sides knew that this was going to be a close race, so they were focusing on the Get Out the Vote all through the day, and they didn't want to dampen any enthusiasm on either side.
Many thanks, George Stephanopoulos. Our coverage will continue in just a moment.
Next Tuesday, ABC presents one of the most emotional blues ever. A partner gone but not forgotten returns to help a friend in his darkest hour.
So here I am, in the flesh, so to speak. Something like that.
Jimmy Smith's guest stars.
I never got over not having you in the world. I miss you too.
The year's most unforgettable episode.
Tell me what to do, Bobby.
NYPD Blue. Next Tuesday, 10/9 Central, only on ABC.
Rain ending overnight, a low of 39.
On the next Jane Pauley Show, from The Apprentice, Carolyn Kepcher. She reveals the secrets of her success and puts her biggest fan to the test. Get the tips to help get your dream job on the next Jane Pauley Show.
Today at 10 on News Channel 5.
Diamonds, the perfect gift. The Jewelry Factory has quarter-carat diamond studs for $49 and 3-stone pendants and earrings for $99. Prices so low, we guarantee all our jewelry to appraise for double. Buy Factory Direct and Save, the Jewelry Factory in North Randall.
A snowman just isn't a snowman without snow. The News Channel 5 School Closing Network. We're ready. Are you?
Looking for something new to whip up in the kitchen? Watch Food Network Minute, featuring recipe ideas from Wolfgang Puck Fridays and News Channel 5 at noon. Brought to you by the Westside Market and Cleveland Magazine. Check out the Westside Market, where you'll find today's taste and yesterday's tradition.
Now it's 5:38. Thoughts of McGriddles make my stomach quake. Or bacon, eggs, and cheese on sweet griddle cakes. Only takes one hand to put them all in my face. McDonald's, I'm loving it. McGriddles, breakfast for you, bedtime snack for me.
If you take away the all-new look, all-new faces, and all-new attitude of the all-new Cash Explosion Double Play, you'd be left with only one thing: money. Lots of money. The all-new Cash Explosion Double Play. Watch it, or better yet, buy a Cash Explosion instant ticket and you could be on it. The all-new Cash Explosion Double Play. Saturday night at 7:30. Right here. Cash Explosion Double Play. New look, same prices, thousands of them.
Planning to sell your home? Ask a Smythe Kramer Realtor to feature it on the Sunday Showcase of Homes, Sunday mornings at 10:30 on News Channel 5. Meet Kent Clapp, Chairman, President, and CEO of Medical Mutual at the Corporate Club Breakfast at Executive Caterers at Landerhaven, Thursday, November 11th at 7:30 a.m. News Channel 5's Leon Bibb will interview Clapp on the issues faced by insurance companies and those who need insurance. For reservations, call Executive Caterers at Landerhaven. The Corporate Club is sponsored by National City Bank, The Plain Dealer, WTAM Radio, and News Channel 5.
News, weather, and traffic every 10 minutes on Good Morning Cleveland.
This ABC News special, Election Night 2004, continues. Once again, Peter Jennings.
Well, it's 11 o'clock in the evening in the west, 2 o'clock in the morning in the east, and after these many hours, ABC News is now going to project the first switch of a state in this entire election evening. So let's go to the board, please. New Hampshire, 4 electoral votes, most competitive of all the Northeast states, and ABC News is now going to call it for Senator Kerry. So Senator Kerry now has 211 electoral votes, with ABC projecting that this state, which Mr. Bush won in 2000 by only about 7,000 votes, is going to be awarded tonight to Mr. Kerry. We're also now in a comfortable position to project that in the state of Minnesota, with its 10 electoral votes, only state, by the way, to vote a Democrat in the past 7 elections, is going to Mr. Kerry. Mr. Kerry now has 221 electoral votes. Mr. Bush has 249. George Stephanopoulos.
Just about 7.5 hours ago, Peter, I said keep an eye on New Hampshire. I didn't know it would take all that time to find out the result of that state.
Long time.
It is a switch, and it shows. Look at across the Northeast, all blue. I mean, we really see the geographical electoral shifts in the country when you fill in blue up in New Hampshire tonight. But again, without Ohio, Peter, New Hampshire doesn't matter in the Electoral College for John Kerry.
It's very interesting, though. Speaking of New Hampshire, it always has a big impact on presidential politics, but not usually at this end of the pipe.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Usually because of its primary, it jealously guards its first in the nation status in the primaries. But New Hampshire is also a changing state, Peter. It's
People
becoming,
pushing up from the south?
Right, and it used to be very, very conservative. And now it's a lot more like its neighbors. You see that tonight.
Okay, many thanks, George. New Hampshire, 4 electoral votes to Mr. Kerry. Minnesota, 10 electoral votes to Mr. Kerry. Now I want to do a quick tour of our correspondents out there in several of the regions. Just ask them for a brief comment each on what is happening of the latest nature in their neck of the woods. Claire Shipman in Ohio.
Well, we're just about to get a briefing from the Secretary of State here, Peter, and we're told he's going to talk about the number of provisional ballots they are expecting, and we're told he's going to say it's in the vicinity of 150,000. There's been a lot of talk, as you know, tonight from the Democrats about whether that number could be more than 200,000. Republicans have been saying they thought it would be less than 125,000. It's all critical, as you know, because if that number is greater than the margin of victory, then I think the Democrats think there's a reason to ask that all of those ballots are counted, and they may still have a reason to hope. One of the reasons that they think many of those provisional ballots might be Democratic votes is because so many of the newly registered voters are probably the ones who ended up having to cast the provisional ballots, and they've thought all along that most of the newly registered were likely to vote Democrat.
Okay, thank Claire very much. It's probably a bit late in the evening to be telling you once more time about provisional ballots, but people show up. They showed up at the wrong precinct. They didn't have proper identification when they showed up. They're entitled, as a result of an act of Congress now, to cast this provisional ballot, which will be not merely counted later, but examined and possibly counted later. ABC's Jake Tapper, as you look out across the state of Ohio now, do you know what you're seeing in terms of provisionals?
Well, our team here is has surveyed all of 88 counties in Ohio, and 62 of the 88 have gotten back to us, and there are 106,061 outstanding provisional ballots according to our survey, 106,061. That is smaller, as of right now, with 96% of the vote counted, smaller than the margin of victory that George W. Bush has. But there is an indication that there are at least questions as to whether or not the Kerry campaign is going to be willing to concede Ohio if the margin of victory that George W. Bush has is around the same size or smaller than the number of outstanding provisional ballots. And like I said, that's 106,000 with 62 of 88 counties tabulated.
Okay, many thanks, Jake. We're going to come back to Ohio in a second, but I would point out that we have not yet projected the vote in Wisconsin. Barbara Pinto of ABC News is in Wisconsin. Barbara?
Peter, election officials are still here in Milwaukee City Hall, up on the 5th floor, counting absentee ballots. There were more than 17,000 of them, 70% more than there were in the year 2000. That is holding up the count in this city, the biggest ward in the state, and it is also holding up the count in Madison, Wisconsin, where there are also about 20,000 absentee ballots still counting. Another issue, one small town, the town of Algoma, a Republican stronghold, small town of 6,000 people. When the polls closed at 8 o'clock tonight, there were 300 to 400 people waiting in line to vote, and they were all allowed to vote this evening late into the night. We're still awaiting results there as well.
Okay, thanks very much. Of course, Wisconsin, 10 electoral votes, too close to call. Campaign till the very end there. The last week of the campaign saw both candidates and their families up in the state. ABC News still deems that too close to project, and I suspect that's probably the truth across the board tonight. Another cliffhanger, of course, is New Mexico, and here's ABC's John Donvan. John?
Peter, just a little tour of the region around here in the west and southwest. Colorado, as reported earlier, its 9 votes went to George Bush. That was not surprising. Senator Kerry earlier was making a stronger showing there, but when the balance began to tilt several weeks ago, he decided about 10 days ago to pull his advertising and spend it elsewhere, so that was not a surprise. 2 states to our west, Nevada is still up in the air with its 5 votes, still undetermined, and the same is true here in New Mexico. I'm in the counting center where they're going through the absentee ballots, which have been surprisingly large this year. In this particular county, which is the largest in the state, about 20% of the ballots are absentee ballots, and they have to be counted by hand. That process has been going on for hours and will continue to go on for hours. We've heard from the governor of the state, Bill Richardson, who is predicting he thinks a 1% victory for John Kerry here, but Richardson is partisan in this. He's a Democrat, former member of the Clinton administration, so he has a dog in the fight. But the early indications, at least from this state, the largest in the county, is that John Kerry has a very, very slight lead in the so far published tally from this county. But again, that's not counting on all those absentee ballots back there, and they could make a significant difference.
And John, I think you said earlier, too, that the absentee ballots are going to be counted. If there are provisional ballots in New Mexico, when will they be counted? Do you know?
They'll start looking at them in 3 days, and they have to report them out by November 12th. And in this state, it's nowhere near the raw number that Ohio has. It's about 10,000 here, but relative to the overall number of votes cast, which is about 1 million, it's a very high number and could be decisive depending on how close this thing turns out to be in this state.
That's great, John. Thanks very much. John Donvan in New Mexico, Barbara Pinto in Wisconsin, and Claire Shipman in Ohio. It's just late enough at night, George Stephanopoulos, I think, to indulge in just a little speculation, if it's okay. Could we go and look at our electoral map for a second and bear in mind that I'm going to make a change on Ohio here for the moment. I'm going to do it in yellow. Now, if we could go to look at the map of Ohio, I'm going to make a change on the map just to show Ohio there. Now, if Mr. Bush turns out to win Ohio, was the Bush campaign, and Mr. Kerry wins everything else, we have that
269.
269 to 269. Now explain again slowly to people who are still. What happens?
What happens then is that it goes to the House of Representatives. And then in the House of Representatives, each state gets one vote. And the vote is determined by whoever has the more members of Congress, Republicans or Democrats. Right now, there are 28 states which would go towards Mr. Bush under that scenario. There's a couple states that are tied. That's enough for him to win.
I'm going to read this, if I may, because this is from, I hope you won't be offended, Mark Halperin, if I read one of your memos out loud.
It depends on what it is, Peter.
Well, you can come over here and check me out if you like. Mark says, I'm going to say this only because I usually tend to say things a little slower than you do, right? Just clarify for me as we go through. The key question now is when all the vote is in Ohio, will the margin be greater or smaller than the number of provisional ballots, right?
And that's the number we're working on right now. We were trying to give you a nice graphic to lay it out. But right now, we don't have hard numbers on either thing. The margin is around 100,000, a little bit above it. And the number of provisional ballots will be above 100,000. Senator Kerry has a leg to stand on, perhaps, if the number of provisional ballots is greater by a certain, he'll need some cushion because he certainly won't win every provisional ballot, as I said before, and he also certainly won't have every provisional ballot that's for him legally counted because of the rules governing which ones are legally counted.
Okay, I'm not going to rain on your parade because you're making any more than that extent of this graphic, but I do want to go to Washington now and talk to a lawyer, among other things, who was a consultant to ABC News in the 2000 election and is with us again in Washington tonight. His name is Stanley Brand. He is a Democrat. He specializes in election law. Mr. Brand, I know this is a little bit of a difficult question to answer, maybe one you choose not to answer. Do you think that the instinct in the Kerry campaign is, up until now, to challenge or concede, depending on how close it is?
Well, I think, again, it's not a replication, I don't believe, of at least what I'm hearing in your reporting of what happened in Florida. The question here will be, how close is the vote, and do the Kerry people believe they can make up most or all of that ground through the provisional ballots? And that's a judgment call. At this point, it's hard to tell. Each one of those ballots has to be adjudicated, in a sense, as George Will pointed out, and that's a very fact-bound exercise.
Will the campaign have gamed out these various scenarios pretty exhaustively before tonight?
I would think they've thought about this one since the provisional ballot mechanism was one that everybody was aware of and was put in place specifically to address the problems that arose in 2000 in Florida.
I asked Senator Kerry last weekend in Iowa what his instinct was on conceding for the good of the country or challenging for the good of the country. We talked about Mr. Nixon conceding in 1960 when there were still possibilities in Illinois and Texas. Do I remember that correctly? Illinois and Texas to challenge. As a lawyer, do you have any particular thoughts about the good of the country and the good of the party?
As a lawyer, I don't think much about that. I think about whether I could win. And my question would be, do you think you can win enough of those to change the outcome or affect the outcome in a significant way? I think that's the question that the lawyers will be looking at.
Many thanks for such an honest answer.
Thank you.
Stanley Brand in Washington. Our coverage will continue in just a moment.
ABC News coverage of Vote 2004 will continue in a moment.
A short time ago, this woman was limited by her mobility. A month ago, this man wasn't even able to get around his house. These are people who chose mobility, and they chose the scooter store. If you're living with limited mobility, call the scooter store today. I guarantee no other company will work hard to make you mobile. If we pre-qualify you for a new scooter or power chair and Medicare denies your claim, the scooter store allows you to keep your scooter or power chair at no cost. That's the scooter store guarantee.
I expected they'd help me file some paperwork with Medicare and my insurance. I never expected them to be so nice or to work so hard to get me a power chair at no cost to me.
You don't qualify for Medicare? No problem. We'll work with your insurance company, even help with financing. If there's a way, we'll find it.
Call the scooter store for free information today.
Call 1-800-218-9680 for free information. That number again is 1-800-218-9680.
The new Jeep Liberty Renegade. With Command Track 4-wheel drive, a 3.7-liter PowerTech V6 engine, and Jeep Trail-rated capability, it never backs down from a challenge.
What will this presidential election look like the morning after the vote? This morning, for the day's first word on all the election results, turn to Good Morning America for the 2004 vote the morning after. It's not just politics as usual around here.
This is the 2004 vote. Once again from ABC News Election Headquarters, Peter Jennings.
We are, of course, very focused on Ohio and the other battleground states of the upper Midwest, and also on New Mexico tonight and even Hawaii, but the rest of the world has intruded in other ways. Report from Baghdad just a few minutes ago that gunmen have killed a senior Iraqi oil ministry official in Baghdad on Wednesday, whose name is Hussein Ali. He was a director general at the oil ministry, and he shot dead as he was leaving his home on his way to work. There's another report of 4 Jordanian workers kidnapped in Iraq today. And there was also a car bomb, or a car bomb-driven device, at the entrance to Baghdad airport today, and that killed 9 Iraqis. And I think there was one other on a bus tonight, which just goes to show you that Iraq is going really hard. And, I beg your pardon? All right, let's go to Ohio and listen to the Secretary of State, Ken Blackwell.
Having to stand in long lines, which were a sign of the robustness of the campaign and the vitality of democracy in Ohio. There's a lot of speculation about provisional ballots. We've heard numbers thrown around like 250,000 provisional ballots. I don't know how anybody knows that number because the final tallies have not come in yet. They're coming in as we speak. We can only give you trends if, in fact, you carry out the trend line. It looks like we would have, at the most, 175,000, but that is just a speculation. We had over 100,000 in 2000. 90% of those were good, and given the increase in the number of newly registered voters, the speculation is that you could have a greater number. And it looks now trending in as some of the smaller counties have come in with their final numbers and their final tabulations, that we're trending towards about 175,000 at the high end. No, I said that's it's trending towards that. Yeah, but we will not know, and nobody knows how many provisional ballots we have had cast until all of the tabulations have come in from across the state.
I know you said you're not in the business of calling elections, but do you think that some people are prematurely?
Again, I'm not in the business of projections. That's what you guys do. I'm in the business of managing and administering fair and efficient elections, and that's what we've done in the state of Ohio in the 2000 presidential election.
So that's Ken Blackwell, the Secretary of State in Ohio, who's saying the same things in a news conference out there. I think he said to us a little while ago. But let us just go through these too close to project states at the moment, because even though they're too close to project now, as we'll talk in just a minute with George Stephanopoulos and Mark Halperin, there may be shifts that will account for a whole lot of other potential goings-on. But just take a look now, if you would, at the popular vote in these various states which are still too close to project. Let's start with Ohio, with 97% of the precincts reporting Mr. Bush has the edge in the popular vote. 2,702,000. Mr. Kerry's 2,500,000 and almost 600,000. In Michigan, with 77% of the precincts reporting, Mr. Kerry has the edge with 1,813,000 approximately. Mr. Bush with 1,704,000. In Wisconsin, also too close for us to project, 86% of the precincts reporting Mr. Kerry has 1,254,000. Mr. Bush, 49%, 1,230,000. In Iowa, Mr. Bush has the edge with 96% of the precincts reporting with 723,000. Mr. Kerry, 10,000 less at 713,000, 49%. New Mexico, John Donvan was talking a minute ago how tight it was. 93% of the precincts reporting. Mr. Bush has 52% of the popular vote, and Mr. Kerry has 47%, about 30,000 between the two men at the moment, and this may account for both provisional ballots or the absentees which they are currently counting. In Nevada, 65% of the precincts reporting. Remember, we're in the West now. The polls close much later than here in the East. Mr. Bush has 50%, 311,000. Mr. Kerry has 48%, 301,000. Whoever had any idea that this was not going to be close and dramatic. And finally in Hawaii, which we have not projected, and nobody thought was going to be a battleground state, but this is very early. The polls just closed, of course. Hawaii, that many time zones away, with about 100 and some odd thousand votes counted. Mr. Kerry has 55%, and Mr. Bush has 44% of the vote. George Stephanopoulos.
This shows why Ohio is so important. Peter, you just went through all those popular votes. Let's run through a scenario here. Right now, President Bush has 249.
Let me get my pen out here. Okay.
Right now, President Bush has 249 electoral votes.
Mr. Kerry has 221.
221. If President Bush won all the states he's ahead in right now, Nevada, New Mexico, and Iowa.
New Mexico and Iowa.
That would add 17 electoral votes. He would be at 266.
All right.
Three
Now,
shy of victory.
I'm going to do something a little, this is sort of a little against my principles for a second, but I just want to tell people at home, we are not calling these states. This is still in the realm of possibilities. But we're going to give these three states to Mr. Bush just so that you get a clearer take on the arithmetic. Nevada takes Mr. Bush to 254. New Mexico takes him to 259. Iowa takes Mr. Bush to 266.
Still short. Give Senator Kerry all the states where he's leading now: Michigan, Wisconsin, and Hawaii. Takes him to 252. Whoever wins Ohio becomes president. That's why he's hanging in there and fighting, even though it looks like an uphill battle right now.
So, in other words, I think you're making an argument. Let me just go to our live update to tell people we're done before I leave that hanging out there. What you're suggesting, I think, this is good, intelligent politics at the moment, not just recalcitrance.
No, not yet. It is their one path to victory remaining for Senator Kerry until it's absolutely sure. And I think there's a legacy of Florida here as well, Peter. A lot of Democrats were disappointed in Vice President Gore 4 years ago because they didn't think he fought hard enough or smart enough in the state of Florida. I think the Kerry team is going to go the extra mile to make sure that they didn't leave any stone unturned before conceding.
I'm very grateful for the support we get in the news division here, but we seem to have a lot of commercials. When we come back, we're going to talk to Tavis Smiley in California, who has some thoughts about Ohio and about Florida.
Capital One.
Check your mail for the Capital One No Hassle Island giveaway. Look inside and see if you've instantly won your own private island or one of hundreds of island getaways.
What's in your wallet?
Even close up, hair color should look natural. That's why today's Just for Men with X-Grace Science targets only the gray hair, replacing it with subtle tones that match your own color. In 5 easy minutes, Vitamin Enriched Just for Men rejuvenates hair, brings back a natural look. No matter how close up she gets. Just for Men with X-Gray Science, the Rejuvenator.
He actually said, "Ciao, baby." My lips are so chapped it hurts to laugh. You should get this.
Introducing a new Neosporin for lips. Neosporin Lip Treatment.
You know how cold sores hurt? Well, with this, they don't. I don't get cold sores. Hello. Think what it would do for seriously chapped lips. Oh. Ow.
Unlike ordinary lip balms, Neosporin Lip Treatment combines a powerful pain reliever with a proven moisturizer to help heal painful cracking and dryness. New Neosporin Lip Treatment.
Now it doesn't hurt to laugh.
TV Guide is calling ABC's Lost TV's most addictive new drama for the stranded survivors on this mysterious island.
We gotta get help!
The dangers are real.
Where is he? Is he alive?
But for one young man to survive,
You're not yourself, right? You don't know me!
he must first overcome his obsession.
I'm not feeling like this.
Struggle is nature's way of strengthening. And conquer the demons within.
I want my drugs back.
Dominic Monaghan stars in an all-new Lost. Tonight, 8/7 Central, only on ABC.
Welcome back to our political coverage. You're looking at Copley Plaza there in Boston, and the reason we're looking at it at the moment is because there is some consideration apparently being given in the Kerry campaign that the vice presidential nominee, Senator Edwards, may come out and say something to this large crowd, which has been, as Dean Reynolds pointed out, dispirited but very patient over the last 6 hours. So I'm going to go to California now to Tavis Smiley, who's been wonderful participant with us this evening from California on any matter of things. But Tavis, as you get rolling here, and I say boo in your ear, it'll be because John Edwards is showing up, and I hope you won't be offended. Your thoughts on Ohio, first of all?
That's my cue to talk fast, so I'm pretty good at this.
Don't talk that fast.
First of all, before I get to Ohio here, there's been some concern all throughout this campaign, Peter, and you've reported on it, and I've talked about it, as to whether or not John Kerry had what it took to energize the African-American base, to energize the Hispanic base, number one. Number two, it's one thing to show up and vote against the incumbent president, but another thing to motivate your base to show up and vote for you. There'll be a lot of questions in the coming days if John Kerry doesn't win this as to whether or not he had what it took from day one to energize the black and brown base. Secondly, if these, I don't want those numbers out because I know you've avoided doing that all night, so I'm going to follow your lead. But if these exit poll numbers, Peter, hold up, which are showing very clearly that one, Mr. Kerry did not do as well with Hispanic voters as Mr. Gore did 4 years ago, and number two, that President Bush has picked up significantly in the Hispanic community. If in fact that is the case, I think we're seeing a brand new trend for what's going to happen to the Hispanic vote in the coming months and years. Consider then that since we're speculating here, consider then that President Bush does win, Mr. Rehnquist retires from the Supreme Court, the president almost assuredly puts a Hispanic on the Supreme Court. You may see the Republican Party put a lock on the Hispanic vote in the same way that Democrats have done on the African-American vote for many years to come.
All right, Tavis, let's talk about those two things separately for just a second, because your speculation about the Supreme Court is perfectly justified, and some of us are surprised it wasn't a much bigger issue in this campaign, because the next president has an opportunity to perhaps make 3-4 appointments to the court. And here comes Senator Edwards in Copley Plaza, Boston. Tavis, I'll be back to you, okay?
Yes, sir. I'm standing by.
Let's go to Copley Plaza. In a minute, we'll go back to Tavis Smiley. And John Edwards is about to show up at this crowd. Can we just have a look at the plaza, please?
The other thing you can argue is
A little hesitation on the side of the stage there, but we are now certain, at least we're told, that Senator Edwards is going to come and make a statement in Boston. And as he does, bear in mind what George Stephanopoulos has been saying in the last couple of minutes, that as to why there may be this very determined hesitation in the Kerry campaign to acknowledge what some other people have projected, that Mr. Bush has won in the state of Ohio. Bear in mind also, too, what Tavis Smiley's been saying there a moment ago, and we'll go back and talk to him about it, that in Ohio it appears so far that in the northeast part of the state particularly, where the African-American vote was so important to the Democrats, as a counterweight to the conservative Christians in other parts of the state, and to some extent to the independent voters too, the vote has not perhaps been what the Democrats hoped for. Here is Senator Edwards on the stage in Copley Plaza.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. It's been a long night, but we've waited 4 years for this victory. We can wait one more night. Tonight, John and I are so proud of all of you who are here with us and all of you across the country who have stood with us in this campaign. John Kerry and I made a promise to the American people that in this election, every vote would count and every vote would be counted. Tonight, we are keeping our word and we will fight for every vote. You deserve no less. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that is a very, very carefully rehearsed comment, I suspect. Senator Edwards coming out to say to these people, George Stephanopoulos, we have waited 4 years. We can wait one more night. And as they've said many times, particularly in the wake of 2000, it is their intention that every vote in the country will count.
Will be counted. We will fight for every vote.
Yeah.
Again, that's what I was referring to just a few minutes ago. The legacy of Florida. 4 years ago, this is a principle the Democrats feel they can stand on, or at least buy some time on right now, and wait to see how many provisional votes there really are out there in Ohio and what the margin of victory is.
And Mark Halperin, if you'd come and join us for just a second on this subject, because I'm sorry to keep dragging you over here. We miss you, you see, when you're not here. Take this even a step farther than George has been, what the Democrats may have in mind at this point.
Right. Well, first of all, as a matter of political theater, what we just saw was eerily reminiscent to 4 years ago when the chair of the Kerry campaign, Bill Daley, came out and gave another very carefully crafted statement in order to preserve Al Gore's ability to go on and contest the race in Florida. John Edwards didn't say anything specific there, but what we do get the sense is what we know from talking to aides to the Kerry campaign, they're focused on the provisional ballots. Now, as we said earlier, the key question is the president's lead in Ohio smaller than the number of outstanding provisional ballots? And ABC's Ellen Davis has just pointed out, absentee ballots that came into Ohio over the weekend have not been counted as part of this, and they will not be counted until 10 days from now. No idea how big that number is either. We have a graphic. I don't know.
Hang on for a second, because we're going to pause for a second, because some of the local stations around the country may be joining us, and some of them may be going away to do other issues. If there are any other issues, I can't believe it. But let's just pause for a second. We'll continue in just a matter of seconds.
Rain ending overnight, a low of 39.
Join Ted Henry and Lee Jordan tonight at 6 on News Channel 5. Why are more people watching News Channel 5? Because that's where you find the newsmakers.
Robert Redford.
And I think the majority of the American people are being disenfranchised.
Sean P. Diddy Combs.
I don't feel like the candidates have a youth agenda.
Mary J. Blige.
There's a lot of people that come from where I come from that do not understand the importance of voting.
Danny Glover.
They become participants by voting.
The people, the stories, the difference. News Channel 5 on your side.
Talking with your kids isn't always easy, but we're here to help. That's why News Channel 5 and Metro Health bring you Connecting with Kids live on 5. Isn't it time that you connected with your kids?
A good meal changes everything, like our new fabulous fruit-filled pancakes, full of apples, blueberries, or cherries, with eggs, bacon, and sausage for just $4.99. It even looks kind of like a smile, see? And at our Denny's, you'll see a lot of those. Denny's, we're cooking that.
Meet Kent Clapp, Chairman, President, and CEO of Medical Mutual at the Corporate Club Breakfast at Executive Caterers at Landerhaven, Thursday, November 11th at 7:30 a.m. News Channel 5's Leon Bibb will interview Clapp on the issues faced by insurance companies and those who need insurance. For reservations, call Executive Caterers at Landerhaven. The Corporate Club is sponsored by National City Bank, The Plain Dealer, WTAM Radio, and News Channel 5.
On the next Jane Pauley Show, from The Apprentice, Carolyn Kepcher. She reveals the secrets of her success and puts her biggest fan to the test. Get the tips to help get your dream job.